Chapter 438. Next to a waterfall near the periphery of Woodleaf, Naruto was topless at the moment, and his shadow clones were standing neatly in a row in front of the waterfall. Watergate's goal for Naruto was to let Watergate use his chakra to stop the flow of the waterfall, and then let the waterfall flow backward. After a period of hard work, Naruto was able to stop the waterfall, but it has been difficult for him to make the waterfall flow backward through the strong wind generated by his chakra. Especially when he heard that under the guidance of Shikamaru Trio, Yuan Fei and Asuma lost an arm in order to stop the Akatsuki from coming to Woodleaf to capture Nine Tails. Naruto's heart became more and more impatient. But things are often like this: more haste, less speed. That impatient mood made Naruto's progress even slower, and even faintly, it was difficult to maintain the current level. After all, he is his own child. Watergate naturally understands Naruto's mentality. But Watergate knows that he can't say too much about such things. Maybe his persuasion will indeed let Naruto get rid of the current confusion, but every time Naruto falls into a dilemma, he can't rely on others' help to get out of the predicament, right? As a qualified ninja, he must learn to face all difficulties. Watergate is very clear about this, so he resisted his desire to persuade his child. Watergate can only stand beside the waterfall and watch Naruto compete with the waterfall, and with himself. Damn it! Why can't I succeed? If I can become stronger, then all this won't happen. Looking at the waterfall that stopped in front of him for a moment, but continued to flow again, Naruto's mouth made a violent roar, and all the shadow clones turned into disgust. Naruto fiercely sat in the water. His right hand clenched into a fist and punched the water. Circles of water splashed high under the influence of Naruto's strength. Seeing Naruto's discouraged and angry appearance, Watergate's figure suddenly appeared beside Naruto. Naruto raised his head and looked at his father, who appeared beside him, and his eyes couldn't help but have a look of hope. Obviously, he hoped that his father, who is far superior to him, can give him some guidance on such matters. But at the moment, Watergate's face was not the excited and warm smile he had when he was training and researching with him. Instead, it was more like the usual Watergate's face that Naruto saw in the Hokage's office, with a serious and cold look on his face. "Are you done acting like a spoiled child?" Watergate looked condescendingly at Naruto, who was sitting on the ground, and looked at the depressed Naruto on the ground. Hearing Watergate's words, Naruto just wanted to open his mouth and argue for himself, but he was abruptly suppressed by Watergate's serious and cold eyes. As a person, it's normal to instinctively seek help from others when you encounter difficulties. So now that you have encountered difficulties in your training, I can completely understand your feelings of wanting me to give you some advice. But you are not only an ordinary person, but also a ninja who puts his own life on the line. When performing tasks, you not only have to face the enemy's attack, but also have to face all kinds of problems from the enemy or from your own side. At that time, are you sure you can find a person to point out a bright way for you to face the difficulties you face? Watergate's words were sincere and cold, but Naruto understood the meaning of Watergate. Watergate didn't want him to rely too much on others. As a ninja, as long as he accepts the task, although he can use the strength and assistance of his teammates, but in the end, he still needs to grow his own strength. Now Naruto, in Watergate's view, has not reached a situation where he can't break through the dilemma. In this case, Watergate certainly doesn't want Naruto to rely on others. "I understand, Dad. I will continue to work hard. After all, between father and son, there is no need for so many words, often just a few short words. Both sides understand each other's meaning. Perhaps this is the way men communicate with each other." Ninjutsu. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto put his hands in front of him, and clouds of smoke were produced around Naruto. After resummoning his shadow clones, Naruto and his shadow clones looked at each other and said loudly, "What is our ninjutsu?" Hearing Naruto's words, Naruto's shadow clones were also excited in an instant. "Go forward bravely. That is our ninjutsu." One by one, the shadow clones either clenched their fists or jumped in the air, shouting their slogans excitedly. Seeing his shadow clone Jutsu so excited, Naruto nodded and said with relief, "That's right, Yes, I am the man who will become the Hokage. Such a small problem is just a stone on the road in front of us. Now let's go all out. Oh, let's go. Yes, it's just a small difficulty. Looking at Naruto and his shadow clones encouraging each other, Watergate's face couldn't help but pull out a smile. The only person who can maintain such a relationship with his shadow clone jutsu is Naruto, right? Seeing Naruto's fighting spirit reignited, Watergate also nodded with relief. During this period of time, Watergate actually had a lot of official business to deal with, and they were all important affairs that needed to be dealt with personally, so after seeing Naruto return to normal, Watergate also used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to leave the waterfall. Naruto, who was concentrating on his own training, also completely devoted his mind to his own training. With the Flying Thunder God technique, Minato arrived in his office. Suddenly, Minato's eyebrows slightly knitted together. He bit his thumb and quickly made a hand seal. After that, he pressed his hand to the ground and said softly, "You're right, you're right. Summoning Jutsu." A small and delicate toad appeared in front of the water gate and said respectfully to the water gate, "The water gate has been destroyed. Watergate, Sama, Jiraiya-sama asked me to pass you a piece of information. The matter is very important, and I hope you can deal with it as soon as possible." When hearing the name of Jiraiya, Watergate immediately connected the matter about Akatsuki that Jiraiya was painstakingly searching for, and his heart couldn't help but slowly sink. Chapter 439. Hearing the news from the little toad, Minato's mood became gloomy, but out of respect for the toads of Mount Myaboku and his dignity as a Hokage, Minato forced himself to calm down and said to the little toad in front of him, "Ha ha ha, I'm sorry. In that case, give me the letter that Jiraiya-sensei gave me first." The little toad nodded, then opened his mouth wide, and a scroll bigger than the little toad's body was spat out from his mouth. Even though it was spat out from their mouths, the scroll wasn't stained with any mucus from the toads' mouths. This was because the little toads used to communicate normally cultivated a special secret technique. Not only did their mouths lead to their stomachs, they also led to a small space used to store items. Watergate took the scroll spat out by the little toad, smiled at the little toad and said, "Okay, I've got the letter. You can go back and report first." The little toad seemed to like Watergate very much. The little toad's face showed a toad-like smile and said to Watergate in his slightly immature voice, "Okay, Watergate-sama. If there's anything else, remember to call me." Looking at the lively appearance of the little toad, the worry in Watergate's heart was unconsciously relieved. Watergate stretched out his hand and patted the little toad's head a few times, then said to the little toad very gently, "Got it, you go back and report first. If there's a letter that needs to be sent, I will ask you to deliver it to me." After being patted on the head by Watergate and hearing Watergate's words, the little toad looked satisfied. A burst of smoke rose, and the figure of the little toad slowly disappeared. But after the figure disappeared, the little toad still left a soft murmur in the air before he left. "Minato-sama is still the best. He's sunny and handsome, unlike Jiraiya-sama, who looks like a perverted uncle. Every time he sees me, he always has a bad look on his face. Sometimes he even jokes about me. I'm a girl." Of course, the little toad didn't know that the murmur before he left was clearly heard by Watergate's sensitive ears. Watergate's face couldn't help but show a bit of an awkward smile. Is my sensei's reputation now bad enough to reach Mount Myaboku? Although Minato felt that he couldn't tell what a male toad looked like and what a female toad looked like, he didn't know. After expelling these complicated thoughts from his head one by one, Minato picked up the scroll that Jiraiya passed to him and carefully observed the lines on the scroll. Minato put the scroll on his desk and quickly printed a few hand seals. Then Watergate gently pressed his hand on the scroll, and a burst of light surged, and the dark red lines on the scroll slowly disappeared. Seeing that the seal on the scroll has been unlocked, Watergate finally took the scroll back in his hand. Slowly opening the scroll, Watergate began to browse the text in it. But the more he read, the gloomier Watergate's face became. Jiraiya-sensei actually went to the Rain Country alone to stop his former disciple from continuing such a dangerous action? And the source of Jiraiya-sensei's information is actually Nangong-ja, who has been living in Woodleaf. Watergate's heart at this moment couldn't help but burst into anger. At this moment, Watergate just wanted to push the door directly, go to Nangong's house, grab Nangong's collar, and ask why Nangong deliberately pushed his sensei into such a dangerous situation. But as a ninja, as a Hokage, his personal feelings can't interfere with his behavior during his tenure. This is the rule that Watergate himself made for himself. Perhaps even Nangong didn't expect that Jiraiya turned out to be such a reckless person. After all, in Nangong's impression of Jiraiya is a relatively stable person. Whether it was when he fought under Jiraiya during the Shinobi World War, or later when he lived in Konoha, Jiraiya's help in all aspects made Nangong maintain a steady image in his heart. Nangong gave such information to Jiraiya. In fact, he wanted Jiraiya to inform Watergate, and then gather a certain amount of power in Woodleaf Village to cause a certain amount of hindrance to Akatsuki. But Nangong never thought that when things involve people close to him, Jiraiya would become so impulsive and arbitrary. He just told Watergate without even asking for permission. He directly went to face the leader of Akatsuki. Closing the scroll in his hand, Watergate began to slowly estimate Jiraiya's position in his mind. Jiraiya was originally near the border of the Land of Rice and the Land of Fire. After receiving Nangong's information, Jiraiya immediately set off for the Land of Rain after thinking for a while. According to Jiraiya's temperament at this moment, he must be impatient to a certain extent. In order to increase his speed, Jiraiya is likely to summon the toad from Mount Mayaboku. Counting the speed of the letter and Jiraiya's full speed, Watergate desperately found that even if he used Body Flicker Jutsu and Flying Thunder God Jutsu to reach Jiraiya-sensei's side, it seems that he can only see Jiraiya-sensei in the Land of Rain. At that time, everything must have been settled. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Umbu hidden in his office. A man wearing an Umbu mask knelt in front of Watergate, waiting for Watergate's instructions. You immediately inform Shikakanara that I have something to do and will leave Woodleaf. I will leave a shadow clone in Woodleaf and let Shikakanara be prepared to deal with official business with my shadow clone. The Umbu kneeling in front of Watergate nodded in response to Watergate's order. Then his figure flashed and disappeared. Watergate made a hand seal, and a shadow clone appeared beside him. Minato said to his shadow doppelganger, "Then, I'll leave everything in Woodleaf to you. No matter what, I have to catch up with Jiraiya-sensei as soon as possible. At least, I have to ensure Jiraiya-sensei's life." Watergate's shadow clone and Watergate were in the same body, so he seriously said to Watergate, "Be sure to save Jiraiya-sensei's life. I'll take care of everything here." Watergate heard his shadow clone's words, nodded, and then immediately used Body Flicker Jutsu to leave the Hokage's office. Soon after, Watergate immediately summoned Gamabunta to hurry on his way outside the Woodleaf. Chapter 440. Let's not talk about the scene of Watergate rushing madly after summoning Bunta. Let's focus on Jiraiya again. After a rapid journey, Jiraiya has arrived near the border of the Rain Country. Looking at the rain and the air in the Rain Country, Jiraiya's mood became more and more uneasy. Is he finally going to see the three disciples of the Rain Country that he has not seen for many years? Jiraiya really wanted to ask his disciples what kind of experience made them start to do such a thing that is likely to cause another Shinobi World War. Standing next to Jiraiya, Tadashi said to Jiraiya with a little sadness, "Jiraiya, are you sure you want to go directly to your former disciples? I don't think this is a good choice. After all, it has been so long. The disciples you knew before and now may be different." Tadashi is the summoned beast that Jiraiya often summons, so there is a very deep friendship between them. Seeing Jiraiya's impulsiveness, he couldn't help but talk a little more to Jiraiya. But Jiraiya shook his head and said to Tadashi, "I know what you mean, and I know I was a little impulsive this time, but I still couldn't help but come here. The emotions that are about to burst out of my heart have completely suppressed my inner reason. Tadashi, I have never been a rational person. Don't worry, I will be careful. If I can't, I will summon Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin to use Sage Mode. Even if I can't win, escaping is not a problem." Hearing Jiraiya's words, Tadashi also nodded. As a summoned beast from Mount Mayaboku, he naturally knows how powerful Sage Mode is. Jiraiya himself is a real Kage-level ninja, and with the help of Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, he can naturally survive. Then be careful. As long as something goes wrong, I hope you won't be impulsive and leave immediately. After saying this, Tadashi directly turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared from Jiraiya's sight. Jiraiya looked at the road in front of him, and in a blink of an eye, his figure disappeared without a trace. In the central tower of the Rain Village, Pain was looking at the rainy sky in front of him with a cold face. The damp and cold air gently blew across Pain's face, but Pain seemed to be unaware of it. His face was cold and indifferent, but such indifference and numbness suddenly disappeared, as if a soul was injected into a puppet. Pain's Rinnegan was instantly filled with vigor. As if he had discovered something interesting, Pain murmured slightly, "That's right. How interesting. I didn't expect him to come." The entire range of Amigakure is covered by Pain's Rain Tiger Freedom Jutsu. As long as the raindrops containing Pain's chakra fall on the body, it is equivalent to entering Pain's monitoring range. There were all kinds of ninjutsu in the world, and it was impossible for Jiraiya to know all of them. Therefore, when he entered the Amigakure, Pain had already discovered him. Pain's figure suddenly disappeared from the tower and appeared in an open space slightly outside Amigakure, and the place where Pain appeared was naturally the place where Jiraiya was hiding. "Sensei, since you're here, you don't have to hide anymore, right?" Pain looked around and didn't directly find Jiraiya's figure, but the Rain Tiger Freedom Jutsu he used completely revealed Jiraiya's hiding place in front of Jiraiya. Looking at Pain, who was staring straight at him, Jiraiya naturally knew that he had been discovered, so he walked out of his hiding place. "I didn't expect that the last time we met, you were still helpless children. Now we are standing directly on the opposite side." Jiraiya looked at Pain, who had yellow hair and black chakra sticks on his face, and said with a little emotion, "What should I call you now? The leader of Akatsuki, Pain, Yahiko, or Nagato?" When Jiraiya saw Pain for the first time, he recognized that this body was one of his former disciples, Yahiko, who was forced to death by Hanzo the Salamander and Shimura Danzo. But in Yahiko's eyes, there was the Rinnegan that belonged to another disciple of his, Nagato. "It doesn't matter, a name is just a code name. You can call me anything, but maybe Pain is more suitable for my current appearance, right?" Unaffected by the attack in Jiraiya's words, Pain still looked at Jiraiya indifferently. Looking at Pain's unmoved look, Jiraiya couldn't help but sigh, and said to Pain with a gloomy face, "You really can't stop the dangerous plan you are carrying out? You, Konan, and Yahiko are all victims of the war, and your current actions are triggering the next war. Do you want more people to experience the sadness you have experienced before?" Pain listened to the words of his former master, Jiraiya, and his expression unconsciously became a bit arrogant. "Jiraiya-sensei, do you know? A long time ago I was afraid of my eyes, especially when I knew that they were the eyes of the Six Paths Sannin, the ancestor of Shinobi world. The fear in my heart was like a wild grass that kept growing crazily. But after I saw Yahiko being forced to death, I finally understood why I have these eyes. This world is sick, and it's terminally ill, and it needs urgent treatment. My eyes were given to me by the Six Paths Sannin to save the world. I want to perform surgery on the terminally ill Shinobi world. I want this world to be free from the threat of war, and this is the ultimate goal of my plan." Listening to Pain's discovery of him as a savior, Jiraiya looked at Pain's strange eyes and shook his head and said to Pain, "It's not just the world that's sick, you're sick too. Your current behavior is creating more pain, and I won't let you do that. No one can change the whole world with their own strength. What we can do is to make everyone understand each other, so that the world can be peaceful for a long time." Chapter 441. Creating a Deeper Pain? Hearing Jiraiya's words, Pain didn't refute it at all. Instead, he nodded with a little agreement and said to Jiraiya, "Yes, I'm creating a deeper pain." "Jiraiya-sensei, I don't know if you have such a feeling. Whenever something happy happens around you, even if it has a deep impact on you, After a period of time, your memory of this so-called happiness will gradually become blurry. But when something hurts you, even if it's a small injury, you can still remember it very clearly. If it causes serious loss and harm to you, even if you deliberately forget it, once you get a little incentive, you will immediately recall the pain you suffered at the time. Looking at Jiraiya, Pain slowly threw out his own question. Jiraiya racked his brain, hoping to refute Pain's words, but after thinking about it, he found that all his refutations seemed to have some loopholes and reluctance. People themselves need to experience pain to grow up. Jiraiya couldn't find the slightest reason to refute this matter. When you were young, you ran too fast and didn't see a small stone on the ground clearly and fell down. Pain will be written in your memory for you. Don't ignore the surroundings when you run, or you will get hurt. Although such a memory may be erased, the truth will always stay in your memory, so that you will always remember the pain you suffered because you didn't pay attention to the surroundings. Compared to happiness, pain can leave a deeper impression on people. This is human nature. Seeing that Jiraiya still couldn't find a reason to refute for a long time, Pain didn't deliberately let Jiraiya express his opinion. Instead, he continued, "The reason why Akatsuki was named Akatsuki by me, Yahiko, and Konan is because we hope that the organization we established can become the people who bring light to the shinobi world during such a dark time. At first, we hoped to bring peace through more conciliatory means, just like what you said, Jiraiya-sensei. But what did we get? He was hunted down, threatened, and betrayed. This is what we've been through. We clearly don't have any evil intentions. We're working hard for such a noble cause. But why are we being treated like this?" At that time, I didn't understand. However, when Yahiko was forced into a difficult situation by Hanzo and Shimura Danzo, and sacrificed his life to save others, I knew that our previous actions could not bring peace to the shinobi world. Shinobi world is a child who needs to be educated. Only unforgettable pain can make this naughty child understand how to be a good baby. The shinobi world needs more pain, because this kind of pain is the most powerful seed to save the ninja world. Obviously, he was talking about the unfair treatment he had experienced, but Pain's face was still as usual, without any remorse or annoyance, as if he was telling someone else's story. But when Pain said that the ninja world needs pain, the emotions that were deeply accumulated in his heart finally gushed out. That cold face finally had a trace of human color, instead of a god who bemoans the state of the universe. Listening to Pain's words, Jiraiya couldn't help but remember a prophecy made by the great Toad Sage. Among his disciples, not only will there be a child of prophecy, who can save the shinobi world and end the war, but at the same time, there will also be a child of war who will start the war for the shinobi world. Although Pain didn't say his plan clearly, the way to educate the disobedient children in the entire shinobi world, after thinking about it carefully, is bound to have a great impact and cause great harm to the entire shinobi world, isn't it? Child of war. Looking at Pain, Jiraiya's mouth gradually murmured, with a bit of sadness and sympathy in his eyes. But then Jiraiya's eyes became firm. "Pain, to be honest, my vision is not as long-term as yours. You have put your vision beyond human and put God in the position of God. You even call the people in the entire shinobi world disobedient children. I don't have such a mindset. Compared with you, maybe I'm just a frog in the well who spies on the world in a dry well. But when you decided to make the entire shinobi world feel pain through war, didn't you become one of the disobedient children? Indeed, the Rinnegan you have is undoubtedly the God's eye, but your body and your soul are still a mortal born and raised in the mortal world. When a mortal places himself in the position of a god, what he brings to others and himself is not salvation, but destruction. You have embarked on the wrong path. As your teacher, teaching those naughty children is also my duty and obligation." Pain, "No, Nagato, I will stop you from doing such a dangerous thing." With that, Jiraiya's body slowly squatted down, one hand on the ninja backpack behind him, and the other hand opened in front of his body. His white hair moved without wind, and Jiraiya's face, which often had a wretched smile, was particularly serious at this moment. Obviously, Jiraiya was ready to fight. Pain looked at Jiraiya opposite him, and his eyes couldn't help but have a bit of reminiscence. During the time when Jiraiya stayed in the Rain Country, he protected Yahiko and Conan again and again. Wasn't that the same expression he had on his face? Although Pain had been saying before that happy memories were always easy to fade away, Garen didn't know what to say. But at this moment, Pain doesn't seem to have completely forgotten those difficult but extraordinarily happy days. Jiraiya-sensei, to be honest, I don't want to fight with you. After all, you and I used to have a master-disciple relationship. As long as you are willing to leave and promise that you will not interfere in the affairs of Akatsuki and the shinobi world, I can let you go. Pain was still a little soft for his former teacher, and he even let Jiraiya go. But as Jiraiya's disciple, Pain naturally knew that his persuasion was useless. After all, Jiraiya is such a person who can put his own safety in the lowest position for a more noble cause. Chapter 442. Sure enough, after hearing Pain's pity, because of the meeting, Jiraiya didn't really leave as Pain said. Instead, Jiraiya took a firm step forward and said to Pain, "You can't do anything to me. People will die in the end. The only difference is here and elsewhere. I have lived in such a chaotic ninja world for so long. I have experienced happiness, and I have also experienced pain. Now, if I sacrifice my life to alleviate the pain that more people and even the entire ninja world will experience, I don't think it's a bad thing." Although he said so, Jiraiya's eyes flashed with a trace of regret. After all, before Jiraiya left with Leaf, he went to see Tsunade once. On that day, the two talked about a lot of topics that they had never talked about before. Because at that time, Jiraiya already knew that he was facing a death threat that may be more terrible than any previous mission. So under such threat, Jiraiya finally restrained his usual unruly appearance and seriously had a conversation with Tsunade, the woman he loved all his life. No one knew the process of the conversation, but whether it was Tsunade who was sitting in her living room or Jiraiya, who had just walked out of the mansion gate, both of them were over 50 years old and experienced the world, but their eyes were red. Before entering the Rain Country, Jiraiya once said to Tadashi, who came with him, that as long as he couldn't defeat him, he would immediately use Sage Mode to escape. But looking at Pain standing opposite him now, the option of escape was directly ruled out by Jiraiya. Stopping such a dangerous child is also his duty as a teacher, isn't it? It's a pity. Maybe the agreement between him and Tsunade can only be put aside like this. I didn't expect that, in the end, my promise to Tsunade also became empty talk. Before Jiraiya could continue to regret, Pain, who was standing opposite Jiraiya, had already moved. No, it shouldn't be said that Pain moved, but a figure with the same orange hair and a face full of black iron rod decorations suddenly appeared beside Pain. Before Jiraiya had time to speak, the man, who was also wearing the Akatsuki's black robe with red clouds, had quickly printed hand signs. Summoning Jutsu. A voice slightly similar to Pain's voice came out from the man's mouth, and at the same time, four figures also appeared with the emergence of a large cloud of smoke. Jiraiya-sensei. Looking at Jiraiya, Pain slowly took a step forward and said to Jiraiya, "You are my most respected sensei. I originally wanted to let you live, but you gave up such an opportunity. Since things have come to this, I will use my strongest power to fight with you and give you the respect you deserve." Seemingly understanding Pain's meaning, the 5 people who suddenly appeared just now also stood behind Pain in unison. They were obviously 6 different individuals, but at this moment, they suddenly spoke in unison without the slightest difference. Pain Rakuto joined. Looking at these 6 figures with different faces and body shapes, Jiraiya felt the same aura from them. It seems that this so-called Pain Rakuto is actually an existence controlled by Nagato. After Jiraiya and Pain Rakuto looked at each other for a moment, they moved at the same time. Pain Rakuto has differences in body shape. As a veteran ninja, Jiraiya naturally quickly analyzed these 6 enemies. Although Jiraiya doesn't know the name of Pain Rakuto, for the sake of writing convenience, we will call them the Rakuto of Pain Rakuto below. Tendo Pain is the first Pain Rakuto to appear in front of Jiraiya, and it is also the Pain Rakuto created by Yahiko's body, who has the closest relationship with Nagato. then does it mean that the power possessed by Heaven's Way Pain is the most powerful in the 6 paths of pain? Therefore, from the beginning, Jiraiya excluded Tendo from his first target. Shirado is the most burly one in Pain Rakudo. Although a burly body does not necessarily mean that he is the main attacker, at least it can prove that such an existence has excellent physical fitness. Such a person is likely to be the main attacker in Pain Rakudo. So Jiraiya is still a little entangled whether to take the lead in eliminating such a person who seems to be the main attacker. Rendo's figure was relatively slimmer, but Jiraiya had no way to speculate the strength of such an enemy without fighting. So Jiraiya ruled out such an enemy as his attack target. Chikishoto, who has appeared once before, used summoning jutsu to summon the other Pain Rakudo. So, does it mean that Chikishoto is actually an existence who is proficient in summoning jutsu? If this is the case, then Jiraiya thinks that it is a good choice to exclude such a person who can use summoning jutsu. The remaining 2 6 paths of pain from Jigakudo and Gakido did not show their combat power. It was also impossible to judge their position in the 6 paths of pain from their appearance. Therefore, Jiraiya used the same reason to exclude the Mundo to exclude these 2 from the attack targets. Although it seems that Jiraiya made such a decision after a long period of judgment, in fact, Jiraiya did not dwell too much on the choice of such an attack target. Jiraiya, who has experienced countless battles with fewer enemies, is actually very clear that all his plans are based on subjective assumptions. Any subtle error in judgment will lead to the disclosure of his plan. Therefore, when fighting with many people, the most important thing is never the plan. It is to maintain your flexibility and physical strength, and perform the most appropriate attack at the most appropriate time. This is why Jiraiya has decided to fight to the death with Pain Rakudo, but he did not immediately summon Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin to cooperate with him to display his strongest power. Chapter 443. At the moment when Jiraiya began to move, Chikishoto of Pain's Rakudo also quickly printed in his hand. Similar to Jiraiya's speculation, Chikishoto still used the summoning jutsu that he had shown before. He pressed his hands on the ground, and runes quickly spread from the place where Chikishoto's hands pressed. Summoning jutsu! A loud shout sounded from Chikishoto's mouth, and a huge cloud of smoke instantly formed under Chikishoto. Generally speaking, the larger the size of the summoned beast summoned by summoning jutsu, the larger the smoke produced by summoning jutsu. Looking at the smoke that appeared after Chikishoto used summoning jutsu, it was not difficult to see that Chikishoto summoned a huge rare summoned beast. A huge claw emerged from the smoke, waving the claw to cut the smoke around him, and the summoned beast summoned by Chikishoto completely appeared in front of Jiraiya. Sure enough, a huge crab-shaped summoned beast with a height of about 20 meters appeared in Jiraiya's sight. After summoning the summoned beast, Chikishoto did not let the crab-shaped summoned beast immediately rush up to attack Jiraiya. Instead, he quickly printed in his hand. He used his own chakra to mobilize the summoned beast's chakra and let the summoned beast perform ninjutsu. Water release, foam burst. Bubbles were spat out from the mouth of the crab-shaped summoned beast. Pain really knew Jiraiya too well. When he was in the Rain Country, Pain and Jiraiya spent 3 years together. In the past 3 years, Pain has seen Jiraiya fight countless times, and he has also fought with Jiraiya's shadow clone many times. Although it has been so many years, a person's fighting habits are not so easy to change. During the battle, Jiraiya mainly used ninjutsu with his hair, and the powerful fire release ninjutsu combined with the toad oil of Mount Miyaboku. Knowing the enemy, Pain naturally knew that the first thing he should do now was to exclude the toad oil used when Jiraiya used fire release ninjutsu. His crab-shaped spiritual beast's chaotic foam burst was the best thing to do with toad oil. These bubbles formed by chakra were not ordinary bubbles. They could stay in the air for a very long time, enough to support a battle. After seeing Chikishoto summon such a summoned beast, Jiraiya became more and more determined to deal with Chikishoto first. Facing the overwhelming amount of bubbles rushing towards him, Jiraiya quickly made hand seals. Spirit communication technique. Jiraiya's body floated up about 20 meters out of thin air. Jiraiya's body floated up about 20 meters out of thin air. A huge red toad holding 2 iron rods and carrying a pot lid-shaped shield on its back appeared under Jiraiya. Long time no see, Jiraiya. After Toad Ken appeared from the smoke, he didn't immediately observe the enemy he was about to face. Instead, he greeted Jiraiya. Toad Ken was one of the 3 members of the Toad clan in Mount Mayaboku. The other 2 were Toad Hero, who used 2 swords, and Toad Gamuda, who used a one-handed sword. Seeing Toad Ken greeting him, Jiraiya opened his mouth and wanted to say something to Toad Ken, but the bubbles all over the sky rushed towards Jiraiya's body at this moment. Jiraiya, who opened his mouth, was naturally directly filled with foam. Toad Ken, on the other hand, was very alert and placed the pot lid-shaped shield in front of him to protect himself. Toad Ken, you clearly saw the foam rushing over. Why didn't you remind me? Jiraiya looked at his wet body, and then looked at Toad Ken, who was only stained with a little bit of foam because of his protection. Jiraiya couldn't help but complain. Toad Ken, on the other hand, opened his eyes, revealing a little doubt in his eyes. He seemed to be curious about why Jiraiya complained to him. Jiraiya saw Toad Ken's appearance, and he knew that with Toad Ken's dull temperament, there was no way for it to know that the reason why he complained to it just now was to make Pain and the others slightly lower their guard because of his performance. Forget it, it's a small matter. You don't have to think so much. What we have to do now is to defeat these enemies in front of us. Originally, Jiraiya was going to use a little trick to confuse Pain, but thinking about it carefully, with Pain's understanding of him, how could he be confused by such a small trick? So Jiraiya's face changed, and he no longer had any complaints. He seriously said to Toadaki, "Toadaki." Toad Ken scratched his head with the barbed iron rod in his hand. He didn't seem to understand why Jiraiya's mood was so volatile, but then he threw such doubts to the back of his mind, because Chikishoto, who was standing opposite Toad Ken, began to summon a huge summon beast on a large scale. These summon beasts were in different postures: a dog, a centipede, a chameleon, and a buffalo. For summon beasts of the same size were all standing beside Chikishoto. Their eyes were red, and their emotions were restless. They seemed to be barely suppressing their impulse to attack. They were just waiting for Chikishoto's order to show their fangs and teeth to the enemy opposite them. Because I'm clumsy, I don't quite understand what you mean. But the people standing opposite us are our enemies. I'm very clear about this. Let these guys see the perseverance of Mount Mayaboku's Toad Ken. Looking at the summoning beast that was about the same size as him and looked extremely ferocious, Toad Jen didn't feel any fear at all. Instead, he tightly gripped his iron rod and pot lid shield. His huge body leaped up high as he charged towards the summoning beast summoned by the animal path. Jiraiya jumped from the top of Toad Ken's head at the same time as Toad Ken jumped high, and his figure slowly retreated behind Toad Ken. Chapter 444. When Jiraiya saw that Chikishoto alone could summon so many huge summon beasts, he knew that he couldn't hide his strength anymore. Initially, he thought that he could use his ordinary form to cause a certain number of casualties to 6 Paths of Pain and the others. However, the animal realm alone had already brought him so much pressure. If he let his guard down, he might die just like that. Such a situation was not what Jiraiya wanted to see. So Jiraiya decided to use the Sage Mode, inherited from Mount Mayaboku, that he didn't fully master, but he could use it as his trump card. At this moment, Jiraiya left the top of Toad Ken's head and hid his figure in the shadow of Toad Ken's huge figure. His 2 hands quickly formed hand seals, and the summoning technique was completed almost instantly. 2 clouds of smoke were produced on Jiraiya's shoulders. Fukasaku Sanin and Shima Sanin, 2 very old toads, stood on Jiraiya's shoulders. Shima Sanin looked at Jiraiya, who summoned her, and asked softly, "Little Jiraiya, we thought you would hold on for a while before summoning us and let us help you use Sage Mode. We didn't expect you to summon us at the beginning of the battle. It seems that Rakuto Senin's eyes really gave you a lot of pressure." Compared to Shima Sanin, who was like an old woman caring about Jiraiya's situation, Fukasaku Sanin was relatively more serious. His pair of toad eyes skipped over Pain Rakuto and Toad Ken, who was fighting the huge summon beast summoned by Chikishoto, and said to his wife and Jiraiya with a dignified look in his eyes, "Well, now is not the time to admire the power of Rinnegan. No matter how powerful Rinnegan is, we only need to think about fighting it with all our strength. Old woman, cooperate with Jiraiya to cast the Sage Jutsu." Toad Ken can't hold on much longer. Almost just a glance, Fukasaku Sanin also quickly found that Toad Ken had fallen into a disadvantage. So he immediately said to Jiraiya and his wife Fukasaku Sanin. Looking at her husband's serious face, Shima Sanin looked at him and whispered softly, "You only know how to put on a stink face, you old man. If it weren't for the business now, see how I will teach you a lesson when we go back." But despite the complaints in her mouth, Shima Sanin and Fukasaku Sanin still stood on Jiraiya's shoulder. They put their palms together and continued to gather natural energy into Jiraiya's body. Jiraiya also closed his eyes gently and began to absorb the natural energy in the air. With the constant infusion of natural energy into his body, Jiraiya's figure slowly changed. Jiraiya's originally very loose clothes were now bulging due to his expanding body, and some toad features also appeared on his face. His nose became round and swollen, similar to the back of a toad, and the red mark on his face continued to extend, drawing lines similar to Toad's face. Of course, the most conspicuous feature was Jiraiya's orange eyes, which looked no different from the two Sannin from Mount Myaboku on his shoulders. Jiraiya stimulated the Senjutsu chakra that was constantly forming inside his body to strengthen his body. He directly jumped up from the ground and stood on the head of Toad Ken, who was struggling with the summoned beast summoned by Chikishoto. "Sorry, Toad Ken. I kept you waiting. Now is the time to fight back." Toad Ken also noticed Jiraiya's voice on top of his head, so he looked at Jiraiya with a little doubt. Toad Ken said, "Jiraiya, when did you leave my head? I didn't feel it, I was just fighting these beasts." As he spoke, Toad Jien suddenly sensed the aura of the two Toad Immortals from Mount Myabu. He waved the two iron rods in his hands and sandwiched the front of the split dog's body, firmly blocking it. Finally, he spoke with a hint of understanding. "I didn't expect you to invite these two over. Sorry, two Sannin. Please forgive Toad Ken for not being able to greet you at the moment." Hearing Toad Ken's words, Shima Sannin nodded happily, then said to Toad Ken, "It's okay, Ken, just fight well. I've seen how hard you fought just now." Shima Sannin and Fukasaku Senin's status in Mount Myaboku is only lower than the great Toad Sannin, who has been sleeping under normal circumstances. They are usually the people with the highest status in Mount Myaboku, Toad. To be able to hear the praise from such a person, even the slightly wooden tenacious Toad felt his entire body brimming with energy. He didn't know where he got the strength from, but he directly hit the split dog with the iron rods in his hands. The split dog was directly hit to the side by Toad Ken. Awoo! The split dog didn't seem to have intelligence. After being attacked like this, it didn't have any intention of retreating. Instead, it continued to rush toward Toad Ken. Sometimes it's not a good thing for a summoned beast to be too big. Just like now, Chikishoto summoned 5 huge summoned beasts, but because of the limitation of size and lack of intelligence, these 5 huge summoned beasts can't form an effective attack. This is also the important reason why Toad Ken can hold on for so long in the hands of 5 summoned beasts that are not inferior to his own size. Looking at the bubbles all over the ground, Jiraiya naturally felt that this is a bit too disadvantageous for him. So he gave Toad Ken a look, and his hands began to quickly form hand seals. Toad Jien, on the other hand, displayed his extraordinary jumping ability as he leapt up from the ground. His mouth was bulging as if he was storing something. Sannin, Katan, Toad Oil Bomb, Jiraiya, Fukasaku Sannin, and Shima Sannin shouted the name of their ninjutsu, and Toad Ken also spat out the toad oil in his mouth. Jiraiya put his hand in front of his mouth and blew a huge flame from Jiraiya's mouth to the toad oil spat out by Toad Ken. The flame mixed with Sannin chakra wasn't the common orange flame. Instead, it had a little white luster which was quite sacred and hot. The flame all over the sky rushed toward the 5 huge summoned beasts on the ground, Pain Rakuto, and the bubbles all over the ground. Chapter 445. The white flame burning with the toad oil sprinkled down from the sky. Looking at the white flame that obviously had unusual power, Pain Rakuto also reacted quickly. Chikishoto commanded the 5 huge summoned beasts he summoned to surround Pain Rakuto, using their huge bodies to form a thick meat shield. After commanding his summoned beasts to form a meat wall, Chikishoto immediately stood together with the other 5 Rakuto clones. Kikito's clone seemed to have received some instructions and walked out of the crowd. He opened his hands and kept staring at the seemingly weak part of the meat wall surrounded by the 5 summoned beasts. He was always on guard against the invasion of the defensive flame and then used his power to absorb the flame. The overwhelming white flame fell on the ground, and countless bubbles were quickly evaporated under the high temperature. The meat wall formed by the 5 huge summoned beasts also suffered more flame attacks under the deliberate attention of Jiraiya and Toadken. The raging flame burned for nearly 5 minutes. Although the huge summoned beasts summoned by Chikishoto lost their wisdom due to the forced control of Rinnegan, their bodies were still flesh and blood. After being burned by the blazing flame, the breath of the 5 summoned beasts had become extremely weak. Black traces of carbonization due to the high temperature even appeared on their bodies. When the last flame was extinguished, the 5 summoned beasts all turned into white smoke and disappeared. Pain Rakuto, who was wrapped in the body of the 5 summoned beasts for protection, also appeared in front of Jiraiya. Pain Rakuto didn't seem to expect that the power of ninjutsu mixed with senjutsu chakra would be so great. The toad oil flame bomb with certain liquid characteristics leaked through the gap of the summoned beast wall. Kikito tried his best to absorb the white flames with his ability, but he still couldn't do anything. At this moment, except for Tendo Pain, who can use repulsive and gravitational ninjutsu, and Rendo, who is agile and good at close combat, there are no burn marks on their bodies. The other 4 Rakuto doppelgangers have some burn marks on their bodies. Among them, Chikishoto and Shirato were the most affected. After all, Chikishoto was a summoner who accumulated a lot of chakra to summon beasts, while Shirato was a heavy shooter unit responsible for various long-range attacks. These 2 Rakuto clones suffered more damage because of their positioning. Pain Rakuto had the ability to repair the other Rakuto clones, but the high-intensity battle made it difficult for Jigoko to use its summoning jutsu, Yama, to repair the other Rakuto clones. Now that he saw that 2 of his 6 doppelgangers had suffered a certain degree of damage, the Naraka realm thought that he should find an opportunity to release King Yama to repair the damaged doppelgangers. But Jiraiya didn't give Jigoko, or Pain Rakuto, such an opportunity. After entering Sage Mode, Jiraiya's physical fitness and other aspects have made great progress. Coupled with Senjutsu Chakra and Fire Release, Jiraiya was like a tiger with wings. Take advantage of the enemy's weakness. Such a sentence was not just a saying, it was a good strategy to defeat the enemy. Gamaken, you can go back and rest first. I will continue the battle. Jiraiya looked at Gamaken, who was standing next to him with large and small wounds on his body, and said to Gamaken, large summon beasts are of great benefit in large-scale battles or summon beast battles, but in small-scale battles, large summon beasts' bloated body size and relatively less agile physical reactions are a shortcoming. Gamaken has completed the task of buying time for Jiraiya to enter Sage Mode, so Jiraiya naturally didn't mind letting Gamaken go back and rest. After hearing Jiraiya's words, Gamaken didn't say much, just nodded, and his body turned into a cloud of smoke and drifted in the air. Naturally, Jiraiya was also shrouded in the smoke when Toadken disappeared. When the smoke dissipated, Jiraiya's figure quietly disappeared from his original position. Jiraiya's Kage-level strength is not out of thin air, but through battle after battle. At this moment, Jiraiya is using Mount Miyaboku's Sage Mode, plus 2 Gamaken Sennin's assistance. Jiraiya has actually completely surpassed the conventional Kage level. If such a level must be named, perhaps Super Kage level is the correct name, right? Although the 6 paths of pain here have their own strengths, they also have various weaknesses at that time. Gendo and Gikito lack long-range attacks, Shirato and Chikishoto lack defensive abilities, and Jigakuto itself is more of an auxiliary role. Even the most powerful Tendo Pains, Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tensei have great limitations. Once the opportunity is seized, it is not impossible to eliminate it. So at this moment, Jiraiya and 6 Paths Pain were actually on par with each other. But once Jiraiya's immature Sage Mode couldn't persist, then this balance would immediately be broken. The judgment of the outcome of this battle is actually so simple. As long as Jiraiya can defeat Pain in a limited time, then Jiraiya will win. And as long as pain can persist through the explosive period of Jiraiya's strength, then Jiraiya will be easily defeated by pain after that. A battle was a race against time. 6 paths of pain's doppelgangers formed a circle, all of them watching their surroundings vigilantly, alert to Jiraiya, who has disappeared, at any time to launch an attack. Seeing such a scene, Pain actually regretted it a little. Because to be honest, even if 6 paths of Pain's doppelgangers has the strongest perception ability, it is actually only at an ordinary level. At this moment, Jiraiya has almost integrated with the entire environment because of the natural energy in his body. In such a case, it is difficult to find Jiraiya's trace just by relying on Gendo. Chapter 446. Just as the 6 paths of pain were circling in a circle and paying attention to their surroundings, a few cracks suddenly appeared on the land in the middle of the circle. The 6 paths of pain had already discovered this scene at the first moment. The 6 paths of pain, led by Tian Dao, also jumped to dodge. However, Jiraiya, who had become Sage Mode, had greatly improved his physical fitness. Even though 6 paths of pain had quickly dodged when he noticed the movement on the ground, he was still a step late. Shirado, a long-range attacker, and Chikishoto, a summoner, were slightly slower than the other 6 paths of pain because of their physical limitations. When Jiraiya's figure rushed out of the ground, his hand was already near his mouth. Obviously, he was ready to use ninjutsu. After discovering Shirado and Chikishoto, who were slightly slower than the other 6 paths clones, he immediately determined his attack target. Senjutsu. Keton. Flame Bullet Barrage. Originally, Keton, Flame Bullet, could only release 1 fireball, but under the blessing of Senjutsu, Chakra, it shot out flame bullets with a slightly incandescent flame in the direction of Shirado and Chikishoto. In 6 paths of pain, Gakido, who was responsible for defense, and Tendo, who could use gravity and repulsion, could not immediately come to Shirado and Chikishoto to help them escape from Jiraiya's attack. Therefore, Pain made a prompt decision and decided to give up his 2 6 paths clones. Anyway, as long as there is a suitable body, Pain can create such 6 paths clones again. If he is lucky, the damage to these 2 6 paths clones is not so serious, then Pain can even directly resurrect these 2 6 paths clones with the power of his Jigakudo. After comparing the gains and losses, Pain decided to give up these 2 6 paths clones. Once Pain made a decision, the 2 6 paths clones of Shirado and Chikishoto immediately moved. Chikishoto knew that it was too late to summon a summoned beast with summoning jutsu, so it directly used its body as a meat shield for Shirado. Looking at the trajectory of the flame bullets mixed with Senjutsu, Chakra, Chikishoto tried its best to resist these seemingly powerful attacks for Shirado. Shirado, on the other hand, made full use of the precious time that Chikishoto bought for him. He opened all the muzzles on his body and aimed at Jiraiya. Missiles and bullet-like things were all poured out. Jiraiya looked at Chikishoto. Even if he sacrificed himself to buy time for Shirado, he already understood that Shirado was ready to make a big move before he was hit hard. Shirado's attack. Jiraiya immediately used Senjutsu. Chakra, Jiraiya immediately strengthened his Senjutsu. Chakra, Jiraiya's chakra. Attention. Boom! Da-da-da-da. Attention. The shooting speed of the bullets was very fast. In an instant, bullets poured toward Jiraiya like a rainstorm. The attack power of these bullets could only be said to be ordinary for Jiraiya. He used his unique ninjutsu, Chaotic Lion's Hair Jutsu. The Chaotic Lion's Hair Jutsu, which was originally used to bind the enemy, waved in the air like a flexible whip under Jiraiya's control. The bullets were either bounced off or rolled directly into his hair. Although the missiles were very powerful, their flying speed was still a little slow. Using Senjutsu, Chakra as a balancing force, small Rasengan appeared on Jiraiya's fingertips. Every time he waved his hand, the small Rasengan rotating at his fingertips would immediately shoot out and shoot down the missiles that were attacking him. From time to time, 1 or 2 small Rasengan would even pass through the heavy bullet net and hit Shirado's body. But even if he was attacked, Shirado still relied on his physical ability to block these small Rasengan. Shirado didn't know when a huge muzzle appeared on his head, and a power that was not so similar to chakra was accumulating in it. Jiraiya knew that he must stop Shirato's power, so he quickly made hand seals, cooperated with Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, and shouted in unison, Sannin, Senjutsu, Gomen. Jiraiya spat out toad oil in the air similar to Toad Ken's previous attack. Shima Sennin's mouth spewed out raging fire, and Fukasaku Sennin's mouth spewed out gusts of wind. Toad oil, fire, and wind mixed together to form a powerful Senjutsu, Gomen. In front of Chikishoto and Shirato, the flames that seemed to cover the sky rushed towards them. Without any chance to resist, Shirato and Chikishoto were already submerged in the flames. Without having time to see what kind of result his Senjutsu had caused, Jiraiya quickly jumped high from where he was originally standing. After a confrontation with Chikishoto and Shirato, the time was enough for the other Pain Rakuto to react. Jiraiya was not arrogant, but very cautious and immediately left the place where he was standing just now. Bansho Tenshin. Pain's familiar, slightly indifferent and wooden voice sounded. His right hand opened in the direction of Jiraiya, and a little black luster appeared in Pain's palm. At the same time, an inexplicable gravitational force fell on Jiraiya. Jiraiya, who had already jumped in the air, was slowly attracted in the direction of Pain after being pulled by the gravitational force. Jiraiya didn't know that Pain had such power, but he knew in his heart that he must not be pulled by the gravitational force in Pain's palm. Otherwise, he will definitely lose the initiative to fight. So Jiraiya immediately turned his body and landed heavily on the ground. He inserted his hand that had become wide like a toad's claw into the ground, hoping to neutralize the powerful gravitational force around him in this way. Chapter 447. However, Jiraiya obviously underestimated the power of Pain's gravitational force. He had already inserted his palm into the ground, but Jiraiya's figure was still constantly attracted towards Tendo Pain's direction. Pain looked at Jiraiya's struggling appearance. His eyes suddenly flashed with a glimmer of light, and his cold voice sounded again. Shinra, Tensei. The powerful gravitational force wrapped around Jiraiya's body suddenly turned into a huge repulsive force, and Jiraiya was completely affected by the repulsive force. Along with Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin standing on Jiraiya's shoulders, Jiraiya's figure smashed into the cliff behind him, bursting out a large cloud of smoke and dust. Jiraiya shook his head, as if he wanted to wake up his brain that had become a little dizzy due to the huge impact. While his legs were still a little weak, Rakuto's doppelganger, Gakito's doppelganger, and Jindo's doppelganger, who were responsible for melee defense and attack, had already arrived beside Jiraiya. Jigakuto took advantage of this opportunity to summon his special summon beast, Yama. He dragged Shirato and Chikishoto's bodies that had turned black on the ground and threw them into Yama's mouth, seemingly hoping to temporarily repair his two severely damaged Rakuto clones to deal with the following battle. Two black iron rods condensed from chakra appeared in Pain's hands, and he slowly walked in the direction of Jiraiya. His appearance was like a god-king patrolling the world, and an indescribable majesty and domineering aura exuded from Pain's body. Jiraiya didn't have time to admire Tendo Pain's demeanor, because at this moment, Jiraiya was already entangled with Jindo and Gakito. The fighting style of Jindo and Gakito was simple and useful. Both Rakuto clones were good at melee combat. In such a melee combat, Jiraiya could only use Rasengan and some ninjutsu to activate his hair. But whenever Jiraiya wanted to use Rasengan to attack Gakito and Jindo, Gakito always directly blocked the Rasengan and took the attack directly. A large number of Rasengan condensed from chakra attacked Gakito's body. They had clearly exploded, but the powerful force did not have a chance to erupt at all. Instead, it was completely absorbed by Gakito's body. Although Jiraiya didn't know what kind of ability Rendo had, the open palm of Rendo's attack obviously had a certain effect. Out of caution, Jiraiya dodged Rendo's palm attack again and again. Advance, but do not attack. If they retreated, they could only defend. The situation has fallen into a stalemate for a while. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, who were standing on Jiraiya's shoulders, were still calm, but they were faintly anxious. Jiraiya's sage mode cultivation hasn't reached the most perfect state, So Jiraiya's Sage Mode and his body can't accommodate that much Senjutsu chakra. Just like now, the toad characteristics on Jiraiya's body have become more and more obvious. Even if Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin tried their best to use Senjutsu chakra in their body to help Jiraiya suppress the Senjutsu chakra in his body, they still couldn't hold on for long. Jiraiya was also very clear about this situation. Jiraiya knew that now was the time to fight desperately. The more he can weaken the power of Pain Rakuto, the less the threat would Leaf and even the entire ninja world may face in the future. A firm look flashed in Jiraiya's eyes, and he became more aggressive, stimulating the Senjutsu chakra in his body to enhance his physical strength. Jiraiya rushed directly into Gekito's arms. Gekito's ability to absorb chakra itself is actually controllable, but because he is in a state of battle, Gekito's nerves are very tense. Seeing Jiraiya rushing into his arms, he instinctively began to absorb chakra from Jiraiya's body. Once Senjutsu chakra is absorbed into his body by someone who can't adapt to it, he will become a toad or even a stone toad. Now Gekito only absorbed a small amount of Senjutsu chakra, but his body was also out of control. His somewhat bloated body fell directly to the ground and lost consciousness. Without Gekito's cooperation, Rendo's slightly weak defensive ability was as fragile as paper in front of Jiraiya. Seeing that Gekito had lost his fighting ability, Pain also quickly increased his speed and rushed to Jiraiya's side, hoping to replace Gekito's position and cooperate with Rendo to attack Jiraiya. Seeing Pain's figure getting closer and closer, Jiraiya didn't have the slightest fear. Instead, he felt a little gratified that his plan succeeded. "I'm not afraid of you coming over. I'm afraid that you won't come over." Seeing that Pain's figure was already very close to his position, Jiraiya's hands also quickly formed hand seals. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, who were standing on Jiraiya's shoulders, also formed hand seals with Jiraiya at the same time. Obviously, this is a powerful ninjutsu that requires sufficient preparation. Pain naturally saw that Jiraiya was preparing some ninjutsu, but 3 of Rakuto's clones have already lost their fighting power in this battle. Although Pain thinks that it is still possible to repair this level of damage, Akatsuki itself is not a stable place. Out of the vigilance against the masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara, and the worry of his own men's rebellious nature, Pain will never allow himself to have a large amount of combat power that can't be used for a period of time. So even if he knew that this is a trap, Pain still jumped in without hesitation. Seeing that Pain has entered the range of his Senjutsu, Jiraiya poured almost all of the Senjutsu chakra in his body into Shima Sannin and Fukasaku Sannin to support the 2 Sannin to cast Senjutsu. Senjutsu Magic Toad Song. Jiraiya shouted the name of the ninjutsu that Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin were using, and Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin also shouted at Pain together, "Listen to our toad duet, Son of War." Chapter 448. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin made a sound that was difficult for humans to make. Tendo Pain and Mundo Pain, who were facing this kind of ninjutsu, only felt that the space around them seemed to be distorted, and the scene around them, which originally had the style of the Rain Country, had begun to change. The Heavenly Tao and the Mortal Tao were both bound in the illusory space created by Toad's song. The slightly transparent cube enveloped the Heavenly Tao and the Mortal Tao. And around this very special-looking cube, there were 4 huge toads that had both the characteristics of toads and the characteristics of the legendary Akalanatha. Each of them held a huge long sword in their hands, and their eyes were fixed on Tendo and Mundo. It seemed that they were waiting for Jiraiya's order to help Jiraiya slaughter the 2 little insects that had been trapped in it. "Pain. No, Nagato. I'll give you one last chance. As long as you are willing to give up your unrealistic plan to threaten the whole world, I'm willing to release you and let you leave safely." Jiraiya's figure slowly appeared in front of Pain. Separated by a transparent wall, Jiraiya spoke to his original disciple again. After all, Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan had lived with him for 3 years. Jiraiya regarded them as his own nephews and nephews. Now that Tendo and Rendo have been trapped in Toad's final song, Jiraiya wanted to give Pain a chance to change his mind, and it spread like crazy grass in his heart. "Jiraiya, you?" In the genjutsu space, Shima Sanin looked at the soft-hearted Jiraiya and opened her mouth to say something, but she was stopped by her husband, Fukasaku Sanin. Although he didn't know Pain that well, according to the child's previous words and attitude towards the world, Fukasaku Sanin didn't think that Jiraiya's soft-heartedness could move this person who had turned his heart into stone. Now, no matter what, Tendo Pain and Mundo have been trapped in the Genjutsu space. Although this Genjutsu space didn't have the perception of controlling time like Itachi Uchiha's Tsukuyami, it also had a strong binding effect. Once it was cast, it couldn't be broken through in an ordinary way. Jiraiya himself has such a kind temperament, especially in the face of his old friends. Such a temperament is always unavoidable. Such a temperament is a great shortcoming for a ninja, but it is precisely because of such a temperament that Jiraiya seems to be more precious. Compared with the ruthless Jiraiya, even if he had some compassion, this kind of Jiraiya made Fukasaku Sanin love and felt more real. That's why Fukasaku Sanin's words, after all, those hurtful words not only hurt others, but also hurt themselves. Jiraiya-sensei, are you pitying me? Looking at his former master in front of him, Pain said expressionlessly, "You gave us such pity a long time ago. At that time, we cherished this pity so much. But for me now, I don't need it. What really needs pity is this world that makes us cry and shed tears. If you really have pity in your heart, don't give it to me, give it to the billions of creatures in this world. Saving a person's life is just a good deed, but saving the entire world is true kindness. I am a person who walked in the world as God. For God, death is just a small toy in his hand. It is not worth being afraid of." Sure enough, as expected by Fukasaku Sanin, Pain did not hesitate to refuse the compassion in Jiraiya's heart at this moment. Looking at Pain, who had an indifferent face, but his words were exceptionally firm, Jiraiya's eyes were full of sadness and pain. "Listen to the magical prisoner. Kill Duju Song Dash." Jiraiya shouted with a strange accent, half playful and half violent voice. The four giant toad wisdom kings that surrounded Tian Dao and Rinjian Dao seemed to have received some kind of order as they raised the giant swords in their hands. After a short period of charging, the giant swords stabbed into Tian Dao and Rinjian Dao's bodies. The space in the transparent cube was extremely narrow, and there was no chance for Tendo and Manchido to dodge. The four long swords directly penetrated the bodies of the two Rakuto clones. But even though his body was penetrated, Pain still had a smile on his face, as if he was looking at an ant trying to tear his pants, full of disdain and contempt. In fact, Pain Rakuto was a very special individual existence. After all, the materials used to make Pain Rakuto were corpses that had lost their lives. But these original corpses became individuals bearing the power of Rinnegan under the effect of Rinnegan. These individuals were not like puppets of Puppeteer. On the contrary, they basically retained their original fighting instincts in their original subconscious, but they were completely under the control of Nagato. The spiritual power of Rakuto clones was actually the fusion of Nagato's own spiritual power and the remaining spiritual fragments in the original bodies of these creatures. Although their fall would cause Nagato to suffer a certain backlash to a certain extent, it was just that. Just like now, Tendo Pain's eyes had lost their luster, but the contempt on his face still showed no signs of fading. Jiraiya naturally didn't know this. In Jiraiya's view, he had defeated almost all of Nagato's power, and only Jigakudo was left outside. So Jiraiya dispelled Toad's final chant and prepared to fight the remaining Jigakudo. In this battle, Jiraiya thought that although his strength had declined, he had a good chance to defeat such an existence with the help of the two-toed sage from Mount Mayaboku. Jiraiya ignored the bodies of Tendo and Manchido on the ground and looked around to find the missing Jigakudo. But a piece of snow-white paper fell from the sky. Jiraiya was familiar with such ninjutsu. Jiraiya naturally knew the identity of the person who came in an instant. The emissary of God, one of his former disciples, Conan. Chapter 449. Looking in the direction of the paper, Jiraiya soon saw a familiar figure. The little girl who looked soft and weak at that time had an indescribable beauty at this moment. With a little smile on his face, Jiraiya said to Conan, who had a pair of snow-white wings behind her. Sure enough, as I said before, Conan, you will definitely become a beautiful girl in the future. It seems that Sensei still has some vision. Jiraiya seemed to instinctively relax after seeing Conan. After all, in Jiraiya's impression, Conan was still the weak little girl who needed protection. Although Jiraiya actually understood that Conan was able to support the entire Akatsuki with Nagato. The originally pure and flawless white paper must have been stained with blood. Conan didn't pay attention to Jiraiya's teasing. Instead, she turned her gaze to the remaining 5 Rakuto doppelgangers on the ground. Of course, she couldn't help but look at Yahiko's pain for a while. Seeing that Conan didn't pay attention to him, Jiraiya didn't get angry. Instead, he followed Conan's gaze and cast his gaze on Tendo Pain, who fell to the ground. What the hell made you become like this? Since when did all of you, who were originally righteous and kind, decide to treat the lives of countless people as a number? When facing Pain just now, Jiraiya actually wanted to ask such a question. But Pain's superior attitude made Jiraiya unable to ask such a question. After seeing Conan, Jiraiya asked his question. Maybe Conan can give him an answer? Finally, after hearing Jiraiya's words, Conan finally looked at Jiraiya. There was no strong emotional fluctuation, as if the person in Jiraiya's tone was not her. She said to Jiraiya, "It doesn't matter what happened, and it doesn't matter what we have experienced. Now that we have found the goal of our efforts, we just need to keep working hard." After hearing Conan's words, Jiraiya couldn't help but feel angry in his heart. He said to Conan, "Keep working hard? Working hard to drag the entire ninja world into the flames of war. Then the direction of your efforts is really unexpectedly great. However, without such a powerful force, what means are you going to use to suppress your rebellious subordinates? Although they are indeed very troublesome, as long as there is no strong suppression, then they are not a threat." Conan listened to Jiraiya's slightly sarcastic tone, but she didn't refute at all. Instead, she turned her body into a piece of white paper. Jiraiya himself had entered a slightly weakened state after the battle with Pain Rakuto. On the other hand, Conan was refreshed and in high spirits. Under Conan's full power, Jiraiya didn't react as he should. He could only watch the white paper roll up Tendo Pain's body on the ground. After rolling up Pain of the Heaven's path, paper quickly turned into the shape of a drill and spiraled towards the sky. Seeing that Conan took away the destroyed Tendo Pain, Jiraiya knew that things were going to get worse. Ignoring the exhaustion on his body, Jiraiya immediately chased after Conan. Shima Sanin and Fukasaku Sanin looked at Jiraiya, who was obviously in a bad state, so they immediately persuaded him. "Jiraiya boy, what do you want to do?" Fukasaku Sanin looked at Jiraiya with a serious face. "Don't you know what state you are in now? There is not much chakra left, and your physical strength is almost exhausted. Who can you defeat in this state?" Jiraiya looked at Fukasaku Sanin and said to Fukasaku Sanin with an unwilling face, "But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Pain Rakuto has suffered heavy losses. As long as we continue to work hard, we can make Akatsuki lose an important combat power. As long as we can keep Conan and destroy the remaining Rakuto, it is possible to make Akatsuki fall apart. As long as we can do this, we don't regret our lives." Jiraiya also has a deep hatred for war. Every time a war is launched, how many people will lose their lives, and how many families will experience bone-piercing pain? Obviously, he has grasped the opportunity to stop a war that may sweep the entire ninja world. How can he throw away such an opportunity because he cherishes his life? Stupid. Fukasaku Sanin looked at Jiraiya, and after yelling, he directly jumped high and punched Jiraiya's face. Jiraiya's weak body was directly knocked to the ground by Fukasaku Sanin's angry punch. Jiraiya tried hard to support his body with his arms, but after trying many times, he couldn't stand up at all. "You don't regret your life? You don't regret your life. You don't regret your life. Imagine for yourself whether you should cherish your life or not. Whether you are a ninja or a human, the most important thing is to ensure your own safety. It was not only because your life was your greatest treasure, but also because your life was something that was worth treasuring for many people. If you really have the power to fight now, do you think I will stop you? Now, as long as you chase after her, you will lose your life in vain, and it will be meaningless. I don't know how powerful that purple-haired child is, but she has been able to live in the ninja world for so many years, and even become a member of an organization that can stir up the ninja world. Is such a person someone you can fight with your weak body now? When Fukasaku Sannin spoke, he even mobilized some of the remaining senjutsu chakra in his body, so the roar rushed into Jiraiya's ears like the evening drum and morning bell. Listening to Fukasaku Sennin's words, Jiraiya's mind couldn't help but appear one by one familiar figures. Naruto, Watergate, Shinakushina, 3 generations of Hokage, and even Orochimaru, but the one who appeared the most was the woman he loved for his whole life crying in front of him. You don't regret your life. How can I say these shameful words? If he really gave up his life so casually, how heartbroken would these people be? Chapter 450. Just when Jiraiya was still immersed in his self-condemnation, a familiar voice came into Jiraiya's ears. Jiraiya-sensei! Jiraiya-sensei! This is Watergate's voice? That was impossible. As the Hokage of Woodleaf Village, Watergate can't leave the village at will. Otherwise, wouldn't he fail his duty? But such a voice was so clear from afar. Jiraiya couldn't believe that Watergate really put aside his duty as Hokage and came to find him. Similarly, Watergate's voice was also heard by Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin. Shima Sannin immediately shouted at the top of her lungs, "Watergate boy, we're here!" As if they heard Shima Sannin's voice, the shouts suddenly stopped. Then Jiraiya's eyes blurred, and Watergate's figure appeared beside him. In Watergate's hand was a special 3-pronged kunai. Jiraiya quickly recognized it. This kunai was told by Watergate before he left Woodleaf Village. It seems that during the battle with Pain just now, this kunai was lost somewhere else, right? Watergate's face was full of anxiety at the moment. When he saw Jiraiya, the anxiety turned into an inexplicable anger. Jiraiya-sensei, what are you doing? You just gave me a letter, and you came to fight the leader of Akatsuki alone. What the hell are you thinking? Didn't we already say that no matter what action you take, you have to inform me in advance? When you need me, I can also come to your rescue and act with you. How can you do this? Looking at Watergate, who has always been very calm, showing such an anxious and angry expression, an indescribable feeling emerged from Jiraiya's heart. Jiraiya's originally weak arms at this moment, he didn't know where the strength came from, but he stood up tremblingly from the state of paralyzed on the ground. Watergate, look at you, where is the calmness that a Hokage should maintain now? Listening to Jiraiya's words, Watergate's anxious and angry face slowly subsided and was replaced by a helpless smile. I should have thought that once things involve those who have a close relationship with you, you will lose your calm. It's just that I didn't expect you to be so reckless. Fortunately, I came in time, otherwise, I don't know what unacceptable things will happen. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin nodded when they heard Watergate's words. Jiraiya's stubbornness just now really made them feel helpless. Fortunately, they stopped Jiraiya, otherwise Jiraiya's life may really be lost here. But since Watergate has already arrived here, Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin also finally put down their worried hearts. After all, as long as Watergate is here, even if Akatsuki responds in time and gathers a large number of ninjas to besiege Jiraiya, they will be safe. Flying Thunder God Jutsu is not only an offensive ninjutsu, but also a powerful weapon to leave the battlefield. Little Watergate, you should persuade your sensei. Just now, this guy was going to risk his life to keep the other party here. Shima Sannin glanced at Jiraiya and complained to Watergate without hesitation. Hearing Shima Sannin's words, Jiraiya's face turned bitter for a moment. After all, although Watergate seems to be very quiet and calm after sitting in the position of Hokage, he is actually nagging like an old woman. Once he knows that Jiraiya wants to take risks, he will definitely keep nagging. When Jiraiya was a child, he was nagged by the 3 generations. When he grew up, he was nagged by his own apprentice. Thinking of Watergate's nagging ability, Jiraiya couldn't help but have a headache. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin directly turned into 2 clouds of smoke and disappeared. Obviously, They returned to Mount Mayaboku to rest, and Watergate began to talk to Jiraiya in a long way. Those words rushed into Jiraiya's head like a machine gun. Under Watergate's constant preaching, Jiraiya finally couldn't bear it anymore. He stretched out his hand between himself and Watergate and said to Watergate, Okay, Watergate, after all, this is the Rain Country. If we continue to entangle here, maybe the Rain Village will react and send ninjas to encircle us. Although I know you don't care about such a scene, I'm weak now. How about we go back and talk? Hearing Jiraiya's words, Watergate finally restrained the storm in his mouth. Although there was still some blame in his eyes, Watergate, who was worried about Jiraiya's comfort, calmed down and nodded to indicate that Jiraiya's proposal was correct. Just as he was about to use Flying Thunder God Jutsu to quickly leave the Rain Country with Jiraiya slowly walked to Renkin, who fell to the ground, and pulled out a black chakra condensed iron rod from Renkin's body. Take this, I believe it will be useful. Although he didn't understand why Jiraiya pulled out such a strange iron rod from a corpse, Watergate still nodded and flashed away with Jiraiya. Konan took Pain's body to Jigakudo's side and handed Pain's body to Jigakudo. Konan's side suddenly distorted, and a person with a vortex-shaped mask with only one eye stood beside Konan. Why did you let Jiraiya go? So much information has been leaked in this battle. Isn't it better to leave Jiraiya here? Otherwise, our future plans will definitely be obstructed more. The masked man looked at Konan. Although his face couldn't be seen, his tone was extremely serious, and it seemed to have some anger. Konan watched Jigakudo put Pain's body into the mouth of Pluton's summon. Konan slowly turned back and said to the masked man, Compared to such trivial information, what's so important about the leader of Akatsuki? You should know how important Pain is to Nagato. Chapter 451. For Konan, compared to the so-called Akatsuki's plan and the long-term peace of the shinobi world, Nagato alone is more important. If Nagato and Akatsuki are destined to let Konan choose to abandon them, Konan will definitely choose to abandon Akatsuki without hesitation. This is Konan, a short-sighted woman who only cares about what she values. When the masked man heard that Konan didn't care about Akatsuki's plan and intelligence at all, his only exposed eye, the Scarlet 3 Tomo Sharingan, slowly turned, and a dangerous aura emanated from his body. But this scene only appeared for a short while, and the masked man directly returned to his previous slightly frivolous state. Anyway, Akatsuki's plan, or the part of the plan that Nagato knows, can't be completely covered up. Such a big move as catching the bijou has already made Akatsuki in the eyes of many people who are still calm. Well, with Pain's strength, there's nothing to hide from such insignificant information. The masked man took a few steps forward and stood beside Konan, tilted his head and looked at Konan's side face and said, As long as you know that our plan is not allowed to fail, I also hope that you will remember this situation. Remember, in heart. After saying this sentence word by word, the masked man's figure suddenly distorted, but the last sentence rushed into Konan's ears. Since Pain's Six Paths clone has suffered such a trauma, and there is no way to recover his strength in a short time, then I will come forward to stabilize Akatsuki. Xiaonan saw that the masked man's figure had completely disappeared. Her originally cold face also had a beautiful cleavage between her eyebrows because of this sentence. Sure enough, this guy who claims to be Uchiha Madara has become impatient? After so many years of forbearance, he finally can't wait to go to the front of the stage in person. Watergate finally returned to the Wood Leaf Village with Jiraiya. By this time, Minato had already left the village for nearly half a month. As Hokage, Watergate's own work is extremely heavy. There are many things that Watergate's shadow clone and Nara Shikaku who assisted Watergate can't make decisions. So there are a lot of documents on the desk in Watergate's office that need to be dealt with urgently. But Watergate didn't return to his office to deal with these official business. Instead, he took Jiraiya to Kiba Hospital. After Tsunade returned to Wood Leaf Village, there was almost no special movement. She just did her work as the director of Kiba Hospital and trained medical ninja every day. Watergate was still worried about Jiraiya. After all, although Watergate didn't directly encounter Pain Rakudo, people who have Rinnegan can't be underestimated. In order to prevent Jiraiya from being harmed, Watergate forcibly took Jiraiya to Kiba Hospital to conduct a comprehensive examination. After all, in Kiba Hospital, there can be said to be the #1 medical ninja in the ninja world, Tsunade, and his wife Uzumaki Shinakushina, the orphan of the Uzumaki clan who is proficient in sealing. Such a combination believes that no matter what kind of hidden hand, it will be difficult to hide from such a combination. Watergate. Let me go back. Looking at the door of Kiba Hospital, Jiraiya didn't want to go in. He even looked at his disciple with a bit of pleading look and said to Watergate, I know my own physical condition very well. It's just that I'm a little exhausted. I just need to rest well. There's no need to trouble Tsunade to check for me. Before leaving with Leaf, Jiraiya was already determined to die. It was precisely because of this determination that Jiraiya overcame the thoughts of escape in his heart and had a good chat with Tsunade. The content of the conversation was unknown to others, but Jiraiya himself was clear. Now that the threat of death was eliminated, Jiraiya's heart, which had been born with courage, was beaten back to its original state. Now that Jiraiya saw Tsunade, Jiraiya really felt extraordinarily embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Jiraiya's feelings for Tsunade, in fact, as long as the two of them were close to each other, they probably knew about it, and Jiraiya's avoidance for so many years also made Minato and his wife worried. After all, whether it was in Watergate's view or Shinakushina's view, Jiraiya and Tsunade actually had each other's figure in their hearts. But because of Jiraiya's instinctive retreat and the blow that Tsunade had experienced from her fiancé, Kato Duan, the relationship between the two became particularly complicated. It's a good thing for Tsunade and Jiraiya to take advantage of this opportunity to warm up the feelings between the two people. So, before coming to Kiba Hospital, Watergate quietly contacted his wife and asked Shinakushina to come to Kiba Hospital to cooperate with him. Sure enough, when Jiraiya still wanted to entangle with Watergate, a figure with long red hair came out of the gate of Kiba Hospital. Seeing the figure of her husband, Watergate, Shinakushina cast a tacit look at Watergate and immediately pretended to be curious and surprised and said to Jiraiya, Jiraiya-sensei, why are you here? Is there anything wrong with your body? It just so happens that Tsunade-sama is here today. Why don't I take you to see her? After that, she didn't care whether Jiraiya was willing or not. She and Watergate each took Jiraiya's 2 arms and dragged Jiraiya into Kiba Hospital. After the previous battle with pain, Jiraiya directly fell to the ground. Coupled with the long journey day and night during this period, Jiraiya's condition was not so good. Being dragged by Shinakushina and Watergate like this, Jiraiya didn't know whether he really didn't have the strength to resist or just agreed half-heartedly. Jiraiya still entered Kiba Hospital. As the director of Kiba Hospital, Tsunade naturally had her own independent office. Jiraiya was quickly pulled to the door of a room on the top floor of Kiba Hospital. When looking at the words Director's Office Senju Tsunade written on the door of the room, Jiraiya's heart was filled with an indescribable emotion. Chapter 452. Looking at Watergate and Shinakushina standing beside him, Jiraiya still wanted to leave immediately. But Watergate and Shinakushina's serious look made Jiraiya dare not move at all. Jiraiya could only stretch out his hand and gently knock on the door of Tsunade's office a few times. Quang quang quang. A slightly dull sound was produced with Jiraiya's knocking. After a short silence, a voice came out from the room. Please come in. Although it was only 2 words, Tsunade's voice was so unique, with a heroic and bold voice that ordinary women don't have. It made Jiraiya feel very familiar. At the same time, an inexplicable emotion was born in his heart. Jiraiya couldn't help but remember the voice and appearance of the person he loved when he wanted to fight with pain. A feeling of fear suddenly appeared in Jiraiya's heart. Fortunately, he didn't chase after her impulsively. Fortunately, he didn't impulsively give up his life because of his inner emotions. Otherwise, would he have a chance to hear such a voice? Thinking about it, even a person like Jiraiya, who has been through a lot, couldn't help but feel a little red in his eyes. Looking at Jiraiya's expression at the moment, Watergate and Shinakushina knew that they didn't need to force Jiraiya. Jiraiya was ready. After looking at each other, they left quietly. Jiraiya was completely immersed in his emotions at the moment. He didn't notice or didn't care about the departure of Watergate and Shinakushina. He raised his hand and gently turned the doorknob. With the creaking sound of the wooden door opening, Jiraiya slowly walked into Tsunade's office. At this moment, Tsunade seemed to be dealing with some official business. He didn't know when she put on a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of her nose. The original heroic spirit and the intellectual aura brought by the glasses combined. A few strands of naughty hair hung down on Tsunade's forehead. The sunlight outside the window seemed to want to add beauty to Tsunade. A few warm and soft rays of light passed through the scattered hair on Tsunade's forehead and sprinkled on Tsunade's face that showed no signs of aging. "Is there any document that you want me to sign? If there is, put it on the table first and I will—" Tsunade didn't look up when she heard someone come in, because Tsunade was checking the latest plan of the Wood Leaf Medical Ninja Training Program, so she was particularly focused. But after seeing that the person who came in didn't speak, Tsunade raised her head with a little doubt and looked in the direction of her office door. Jiraiya's white-haired appearance and slightly weathered face were reflected in Tsunade's eyes. Jiraiya naturally also noticed Tsunade's dull look at the moment. Sure enough, Tsunade is also worried about me? Jiraiya instantly felt that his heart was filled with something. The feeling was warm and heavy, but such a thing was not a burden for him at all. Instead, it was more comfortable, like wearing a warm cotton-padded jacket in the cold winter. Especially when Jiraiya saw Tsunade slowly taking off the glasses on the bridge of her nose and walking step by step to his side. Jiraiya even wanted to open his hands and hug Tsunade, who was walking towards him. He wanted to let Tsunade know that he missed her as much as she missed him. Seeing Tsunade getting closer and closer to him, Jiraiya gradually became bolder. He slowly closed his eyes, opened his arms, and wanted to welcome Tsunade back into his arms like a swallow returning to its nest. But everything didn't turn out as Jiraiya imagined. Jiraiya got a heavy punch to his cheek after he got it. Obviously, Tsunade's punch was filled with hatred, and she had used a lot of her own strange strength skills. Jiraiya's figure was directly hit and hit the wall of Tsunade's office. The entire Kiba hospital could hear the loud sound of Jiraiya's close contact with the wall. Shizun, who had been following Tsunade, and all kinds of people working in Kiba Hospital were completely unresponsive after hearing such a sound. It seemed that this kind of thing had happened more than once. Previously, Tsunade used her strange strength to throw her desk directly through 7 walls. Shizun immediately contacted the department specializing in weapons in Woodleaf Village to fully reinforce the walls of Tsunade's office. A lot of special flexible and strong materials were added to the walls of Tsunade's office. Shizun raised her head and looked in the direction of Tsunade's office, and said with a little melancholy, "It seems that Tsunade-sama's desk is going to be changed again today. It's only been a few days, and it's going to make our Kiba hospital's budget tight. Changing the desk can make the financial budget of the entire hospital tight." If such a thing was heard by people who didn't know the inside story, they would think that Shizun was joking. However, some medical staff of Kiba Hospital who passed by Shizun didn't dare to speak after hearing her words, but the look of approval in their eyes was so obvious. At this moment, Jiraiya was deeply hit in the wall, and it was exactly the same as the saying, "You can't take it out." Because of the special construction material, Jiraiya was now directly embedded in the wall, and there was no sense of disharmony at all. Because of the huge force, Jiraiya's body stopped breathing for a short time. After a while, Jiraiya suddenly regained consciousness and began to gasp for breath. Jiraiya, who felt that he had adjusted his state, raised his head with difficulty, looked at Tsunade opposite him and said, "Tsunade, you are..." Halfway through his words, Jiraiya couldn't go on, because standing opposite him, Tsunade's eyes were red at the moment, looking at him with 3 parts anger and 7 parts sadness. Those red and swollen eyes directly blocked all the words Jiraiya wanted to say. "You still know that you want to come back? You left on your own and you fought with your life on your own. Do you think you are still the arrogant kid from decades ago? Do you think you are still the lonely boy who no one cared about? Do you think... Chapter 453. Looking at Tsunade's sobbing voice in front of him, Jiraiya only felt that his whole body was full of inexplicable power. He struggled to break free from the shackles of the wall. He slowly walked to Tsunade's side, opened his arms again, and hugged Tsunade in his arms. When she noticed that Jiraiya was about to come over and hug her, Tsunade actually already wanted to leave quickly. But obviously, she wanted to leave, but her body didn't listen to her orders at all. She could only watch Jiraiya getting closer and closer to her, and hugging her in his arms. Tsunade wanted to struggle. Tsunade wanted to use her monstrous power to directly hit Jiraiya. But no matter what, Tsunade couldn't do it. Was it because she didn't want to leave Jiraiya's arms? Tsunade looked at her strange behavior and began to doubt herself. But such a question has always been difficult to find an answer. After all, Tsunade hasn't gotten an answer to such a question since she was a teenager. Tsunade. Feeling Tsunade in his arms, Jiraiya's voice became a little low and magnetic, as if he had completely opened his heart and said, "Do you remember what I said to you before I left? If there is one true love in a person's life that can only be encountered by chance and not sought, then I think that person would be you, right? From the first time I saw you, I knew that the love of my life was no one else but you. But at that time you were so unreachable to me, the princess of the Senju clan. What a noble identity. I could only timidly and cowardly bury such feelings deep in my heart. Took me more than 10 years to bury it. At that time, you, Orochimaru, and I finally had a certain reputation in the ninja world. I finally felt that I might be able to match up to you, but I still covered up this feeling as usual. Finally, you also found someone who loved you, and you also loved him. Even your relationship developed beyond my imagination, but I was completely unwilling to stop the love between you two. Perhaps at that time, I was dull and clumsy, and I was completely incomparable to the gentle, kind, and understanding Seiji. No matter how much I struggle in my heart, I don't dare to reveal my true feelings. The most shameful thing for me was that when I found out about Jedwan's death, I actually felt a hint of joy in my heart when I saw how heartbroken you were. At that time, I was so shameless and disgusting, but I still couldn't expel the joy in my heart. Listening to Jiraiya's words, Tsunade's eyes flashed with pain. It wasn't because of Jiraiya's humble love, but because Tsunade also remembered the happy days when she was with Seiji, and her sadness when Seiji left her. To be honest, for Tsunade at that time, her world collapsed in an instant. What I didn't expect was that, after the incident with the wood leaf, you would directly leave the wood leaf and wander in the shinobi world. For decades, I wanted to find you every day, but because of the guilt in my heart, I couldn't summon up the courage to face you. It wasn't until I received the commission from Yuan Fei Sensei and Watergate that I had the courage to look for you, who I knew very clearly, but didn't dare to approach. I thought that with your character, it wouldn't be easy for you to return to this place full of sad memories. But I didn't expect you to really come back. Do you know how happy I was at that time? The day you promised me to come back was the happiest day in my life. Jiraiya gently let go of Tsunade, who was tightly hugged in his arms, and pressed his hands on Tsunade's shoulders. His eyes looked at the person opposite him affectionately, and said seriously, "In the blink of an eye, we're no longer the young people of the past. Although the years have unknowingly painted our hair and painted our faces, it also made me more aware of my feelings. Tsunade, are you willing to be the one to walk with me to the end?" Looking at Jiraiya opposite her, Tsunade's heart was also constantly fluctuating. With a naughty look, Tsunade said to Jiraiya, "I don't want to. I don't want to." These 4 words were like a bomb thrown into his heart. He summoned up the courage to confess, but was rejected as soon as he opened his mouth. Looking at Jiraiya's dazed look, Tsunade seemed to have returned to the time when she was 16 or 17 years old. She stretched out her hand with a bit of naughtiness and patted Jiraiya's head opposite her, and said to Jiraiya with a little reproach, "You idiot! Don't you know how to look at the atmosphere? This is my office. If you want to confess, shouldn't you find a more suitable time and a more suitable way? After so many years, you still haven't grown up at all. You don't understand a woman's mind at all." Tsunade's words directly turned Jiraiya into a dumbfounded goose. It seemed that he didn't understand what Tsunade meant for a while. He looked at Tsunade in a daze just like when he was a teenager. But then Jiraiya seemed to understand Tsunade's meaning. That kind of joy directly filled Jiraiya's heart. Even if an elephant was raging in his heart, it would be difficult to describe that kind of agitated feeling. At this moment, if he wasn't in front of Tsunade, Jiraiya felt that he would jump up directly. Letting go of Tsunade, Jiraiya said to Tsunade with a little excitement, you're right, I'm in a hurry. I have to prepare well. This kind of thing really needs to be prepared well. I can't be so anxious. I'll go and prepare right now." After that, without waiting for Tsunade's reply, Jiraiya rushed towards the door excitedly. Faintly, Tsunade seemed to hear Jiraiya's excited shout. Tsunade stretched out her arms and hugged herself again. She slowly raised her head and looked at the ceiling of her office. "Break. Perhaps this is the ending you were hoping for, right?" Chapter 454. Mia, did you know? It seems that Tsunade-sama is going to marry Jiraiya-sama. In Nangong's house, Nangongja, Nangong-ro, Mashiro, and Little Linger were sitting around the table eating lunch. Mashiro suddenly seemed to remember the news he heard when chatting with Shinakushina before, and said to Nangongja. Hearing this news, Nangongja didn't say anything, but Nangong-ro seemed to have heard something miraculous and said to Mashiro in disbelief, "Are you serious? I heard that uncle named Jiraiya is a super lecherous guy. Many times, he was found peeping at women's bathhouses next to some of the baths in Woodleaf Village. Such a guy can actually be liked by a great beauty like Tsunade-sama?" Nangong-ro naturally knew about Jiraiya and Tsunade, and most of the news she heard about Jiraiya was not very pleasant to hear. Because Nangongja's family and Shinakushina have a good relationship, they can occasionally meet Tsunade when they visit each other. Speaking of the mature-looking and voluptuous Tsunade, Nangong-ro couldn't help but look down at her chest. She looked at Little Linger, who was a few years younger than her, and Mashiro, who was a few years older than her. Her chest was really inexplicable. For Little Linger and Nangong-ro, who were not very clear about the relationship between Jiraiya and Tsunade, Nangongja explained to the two girls. Both Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama are strong people who have been famous in Woodleaf Village for a long time. From the Second Shinobi World War to the Third Shinobi World War, the two of them were active together as teammates. After surviving under the hands of Hanzo the Salamander, who was known as the demigod in Amage Cure, they got the name Sennin. It's just that they rarely fight in these years, so they're not so famous for some of the younger generation in the shinobi world. The two of them have also experienced all kinds of things. To be able to reach this point, it can be said that they finally got married. When Nangongja said the words "finally got married," Mashiro's eyes flashed with an inexplicable look. It's really enviable two people who like each other got married in the end. Junbai quietly raised her head and looked at Nangongja. Her eyes seemed to be filled with anticipation. Mashiro's gaze was so undisguised that Nangongja naturally noticed it. But Nangongja still pretended not to notice Mashiro's gaze. He just talked to Little Linger and Nangong-ro about some things he knew about Jiraiya and Tsunade. Shaking his head gently with a helpless smile on his face, Mashiro retracted his gaze. It seems that all good things are destined to go through ups and downs. Mashiro's performance was naturally seen by Nangong-ro. Unlike Little Linger's ignorance, Nangong-ro can be considered to understand such things as men and women. But when she saw that her brother didn't respond to Mashiro's gaze, Nangong-ro didn't have any thoughts of enlightening her brother at all. Instead, there was a faint feeling of relaxation in her heart. This feeling of relaxation was like protecting something precious to her. It was so thick and full of guilt. In that case, why don't we go visit them later? After all, we were also taken care of by Jiraiya and Watergate-sama in Woodleaf. Such a big event should be congratulated. Mashiro looked at Nangongja and made such a proposal. For Nangongja didn't like to deal with too many people. He just felt that as long as he lived his own life, it was fine. But his stable life in Woodleaf was also somewhat related to Namake's, Watergate, and Jiraiya. It wouldn't be rude to visit them. Since you feel like visiting, then let's go and have a look later. Soon, Nangongzhi finalized the matter of visiting. There was nothing to do at home during this time. Since he knew about this matter, he might as well visit them on the same day. Since he was going to visit, he naturally couldn't go empty-handed. Therefore, Nangongzhi walked into his room and looked around his bookshelf. He took out a scroll and a booklet with only a white cover without any words written on it and held them in his hands. Taking the scroll and booklet into the living room, Mashiro also instantly saw the things in Nangongzhi's hands. Usually, it was Mashiro who helped Nangongzhi tidy up his room. He naturally knew what was in Nangongzhi's room. The scroll in Nangongzhi's hand was some secret prescription of the blood cloth pavilion's Aoki altar. It seemed to be for Tsunade. After all, Tsunade, as a medical ninja, should be quite interested in such things. But when Mashiro saw the white cover booklet in Nangongzhi's hand, the tip of Mashiro's ears slightly turned red. With a little strange smile, Mashiro looked at Nangongzhi and said, "Is this booklet what you are going to give to Jiraiya-sama? You really have some inexplicable bad intentions." Hearing Mashiro's words, Nangongzhi's face couldn't help but have a mischievous smile. "How can you say that? This is a really good thing. Jiraiya-sama is already so old. It's good to know about it. Otherwise, won't you be kicked out of bed by Tsunade-sama every day?" Putting the scroll and booklet into his arms at the same time, Nangongzhi walked together with Mashiro, Nangongro, and Little Linger towards Jiraiya's residence. Woodleaf Village was not big, but it wasn't small either. In addition, Nangongzhi's family wasn't in a hurry, so it took them a full hour to arrive at Jiraiya's door. Nangongzhi took a few steps forward and knocked on Jiraiya's door. After a while, Jiraiya's hurried response came from the room. As a member of Woodleaf Sanin, Jiraiya's residence wasn't very luxurious. Could even be said to be a bit simple. It was just the most common 2 rooms and 1 living room. At this moment, such a slightly narrow room was filled with all kinds of wrapped gifts. Smelling the smell in Jiraiya's room, Nangongzhi was a little curious. After all, Nangongzhi has been to Jiraiya's house several times. The level of dirty and messy in Jiraiya's house can be said to be through the sky. But now, there isn't even a smell and all kinds of things are placed in order. Sure enough, when a man has or is about to have a family, there will be such a big change. Chapter 455. Congratulations, Jiraiya-sama. Nangongzhi cupped his hands and congratulated Jiraiya with a smile. Seeing Nangongzhi congratulating Jiraiya, Little Linger, Nangongro, and Mashiro behind Nangongzhi also congratulated Jiraiya one after another. Looking at the gifts piled up in Jiraiya's room, he knew that a lot of people must have come over to do the same thing as Nangongzhi's family. After all, this wedding can be said to be the most important wedding in Woodleaf in the past few years. After all, the bride and groom of the wedding are important figures in Woodleaf. After all, one is the current Hokage's master, the legendary ninja of Woodleaf, Jiraiya. The other is the princess of Woodleaf's founding family, Senju clan, and the director of Kiba Hospital, Tsunade Senju. Whether it's the family forces or the Hokage's forces, they have to regard this as the most important thing. Precious gifts were taken out from their family's treasury and sent to Jiraiya and Tsunade's house. Looking at the situation in Jiraiya's house, Nangongzhi and Tsunade probably have a higher status than Jiraiya, and they are the flag of Konoha's family. What kind of scene is it in Tsunade's house? After listening to the congratulations of Nangongzhi's family, Jiraiya quickly invited Nangongzhi and the other 3 to his room. Jiraiya skillfully took out some snacks and tea for guests from the kitchen, and finally casually sat in front of his small table on the tatami mat. Jiraiya stretched out his hand and rubbed his slightly stiff face because of receiving all kinds of guests in the past few days, and constantly maintaining a smile on his face. He said to Nangongzhi and Little Linger with a bit of relaxation, "You can do whatever you want, whatever is comfortable. I'm really tired these 2 days. I don't know when the news spread, but since a few days ago, people I don't know have been visiting me with a lot of gifts. You know me, I don't usually like to entertain people, and I don't even have tea at home. And then, in order to maintain my face, these T&T are also from Tsunade and Watergate. When the people from the major families came to visit, they would make all kinds of strange etiquette-like machines. Although I don't know how to respond to these etiquettes, at the very least, I still have to smile apologetically. I finally understand why the smile on Watergate's face has become less and less since he became the Hokage. It's a gift to receive people every day with a smile on his face. Every day. After cracking a joke that was neither too big nor too small, the three girls who came with Nangongja gradually lost their cautious looks. Instead, they relaxed a little. After all, before coming, Nangongja told Nangongro and Little Linger about how special Jiraiya's identity was. Perhaps Jiraiya was too reserved after seeing Nangongro and Little Linger enter his house, so he used his disciple as a tool to adjust the atmosphere to make Nangongro and Little Linger relax. Nangongro was like a little monkey. After she relaxed a little, she couldn't suppress the curiosity in her heart. She said to Jiraiya with some curiosity, "Lecherous uncle, how did you trick Tsunade-sama? Obviously, Tsunade-sama is a super beautiful woman, and you look like you're 60 or 70 years old." Nangongro just opened her mouth, and the word, lecherous uncle, directly hit Jiraiya. Do I look like a lecherous uncle? I've always been a romantic but not vulgar person. A flower in the turbid waves, ah. Little girl, you're wrong to say that. How can you think of my unrivaled charm as some sinister and despicable means? I tell you, the reason why I can go to the last step with Tsunade is because Jiraiya and Watergate were indeed master and disciple. When Jiraiya complained about Watergate's chatterbox attribute again and again, he didn't realize that he was actually almost the same as Watergate. After Nangongro opened a topic for Jiraiya, Jiraiya's mouth began to constantly talk about all kinds of self-praising and self-praising things he thought were good and so on. And Nangongja saw his sister and Jiraiya chatting so happily, and occasionally inserted a few words to liven up the atmosphere. The afternoon was almost spent in Jiraiya's house, and it can be regarded as a different kind of guest and host. Before leaving, Nangongja watched his three little girls walk out of the door of Jiraiya's house. He took out a scroll and a white booklet from his arms and put it in Jiraiya's hand. Seeing what Nangongja took out, Jiraiya looked at Nangongja with a little doubt and asked, "What are you doing?" Nangongja smiled and said to Jiraiya, "Nothing. It's just a small gift. I think it may be helpful to you and Tsunade-sama, so I took it." Jiraiya quickly put the booklet and scroll handed over by Nangongja back behind Nangongja, stretched out his hand and pointed to the large and small gifts in his room, and said to Nangongja, "Although we're not that close, we're at least friends, right? So we don't need to use this method to maintain our relationship. It's just a kind of slander to our relationship." Nangongja smiled and said to Jiraiya, "I'm different from those people. I won't give you something that's flashy but useless. This scroll contains some secret prescriptions. I believe Tsunade-sama will be very interested in it, so I'll give it to you here, and you can pass it to Tsunade-sama." Putting the scroll in his hand into Jiraiya's hand, Nangongja secretly opened a corner of another booklet with a white cover for Jiraiya, revealing some sentences written on the title page, indicating that Jiraiya should read it himself. After all, Jiraiya-sama is old, and there are many times when he may be powerless. So, this book contains the royal family's secret imperial. Before Nangongja could finish, Jiraiya covered his mouth with his hand. Jiraiya hurriedly put the white booklet into his arms, as if he was afraid that someone would take it away. Looking at Jiraiya's expression, Nangongja's face showed a wicked smile. Chapter 456. Because of Jiraiya and Tsunade's sudden and long-awaited wedding news, the entire Woodleaf village was boiling. This is the union of two top powers in Woodleaf, and it is also an important opportunity for Naruto clan's forces and family forces in Woodleaf to ease the tense atmosphere. For the villagers of Woodleaf, such an atmosphere naturally makes people feel that Woodleaf village is full of hope. It can be said that even the sun seems to be extraordinarily warm. But the world can't be full of places where the sun can shine, and more places are still shrouded in various haze. After leaving Nangongja's side, Sasuke did not immediately look for his brother, Itachi Uchiha. Sasuke's heart was very clear about how dangerous Itachi Uchiha's Akatsuki organization was. Orochimaru, who had been a boundless haze on Sasuke's head, actually escaped from Akatsuki with his tail between his legs. How can he help his brother realize his plan with his weak strength alone? So Sasuke returned to some of Orochimaru's secret bases, took 3 people he thought could help him, and formed his own team, Snake. Sasuke took such a name not only because he wanted to firmly remember what he relied on to save his life in Orochimaru's hands, but also because his team was gathered together because of Orochimaru. Although Sasuke said that he had no feelings for Orochimaru, Orochimaru did have a very profound impact on Sasuke. Not long ago, Sasuke took his teammates Onizuki Mizuki, Red Lotus, and Libra Yugo to intercept Deidara and a new combination named Hoodlum according to his own information. With the cooperation of the 3 Snake team members, Hashizuki Mizuki, Red Lotus, and Yugo Libra, Sasuke and his Snake team successfully defeated the combination of Deidara and Hoodlum despite paying a certain loss. Under Hoodlum's half-deliberate disclosure, Sasuke also knew where his brother was. Originally, Sasuke also planned to capture Hoodlum directly to get more information from his mouth, but under Deidara's crazy self-explosion attack, Sasuke could only summon Manda Snake and use Sharingan to control the disobedient Manda Snake, making him a meat shield for himself and the team. When the explosion was over, Hoodlum's figure was long gone. With the mentality of giving it a try, Sasuke walked towards the location Hoodlum deliberately revealed. Sasuke, who didn't expect to see his brother so smoothly, was surprised to find that Hoodlum didn't deceive him at all. His brother Itachi Uchiha was sitting in a chair that looked relatively intact in the ruins. "Sasuke, are you here?" His eyes were closed, but when Sasuke just stepped into the ruins, Uchiha Itachi's voice came into Sasuke's ears. Although Itachi tried his best to hide the weakness in his voice, Sasuke knew his brother too well. That kind of tiredness from the body to the soul may not be easily noticed by others, but as Itachi's family, Sasuke was clear. Itachi's eyes opened gently, as if to see Sasuke clearly, and his eyelids tightened. Itachi thought he would see hatred and madness on Sasuke's face, but on Sasuke's cold face, Itachi could clearly see a trace of hidden pity. Pity? It seems that Sasuke is not as ignorant as he thought over the years. Since Akatsuki officially began to capture Bijou, Itachi obviously felt that he was more and more guarded, so gradually, the contact between himself and Nangongja became less frequent. As long as it wasn't an important matter involving life and death, Itachi didn't notify him at his request. Nangongja also thought for a long time whether to inform Itachi about Sasuke knowing the truth, but such a secret letter may not only involve Sasuke knowing the secret, but also the sensitive matter of Uchiha Fugaku and his wife not dying. This matter can't be disclosed to Akatsuki in any case, so Nangongja chose not to inform Itachi Uchiha after thinking about it several times. But Itachi Uchiha, after all, was a meticulous person. When he found that Sasuke's state was not right, Itachi also reacted very alertly, blocking Sasuke's words that had already opened his mouth and was about to say, "My stupid brother, since you have already found this place, do you already feel that you are strong enough to challenge me?" Itachi looked at Sasuke and slowly stood up from where he was sitting. His half-closed eyes were now fully open, and a pair of 3 Tomo Sharingans slowly turned into the shape of a triangular pinwheel. "Let me see if you have really grown into what I expect." Tsukuyami. The genjutsu brought by Itachi's Manjikyu Sharingan was cast, and Sasuke's spirit was instantly pulled into Tsukuyami's world. Instead of being hung on a black cross like before, he stood on the ground mixed with blood and black under the moonlight in the shape of Sharingan. Looking at Sasuke, Itachi asked Sasuke, "From the looks of it, you should have already met father and mother and know everything, right?" Sasuke no longer hid his face, and drops of tears were born in Sasuke's eyes. Without speaking, Sasuke threw himself directly into his brother's arms. Although it was Tsukuyami's world, Sasuke still felt the warmth emanating from his brother's body. Caught off guard by Sasuke's hug, Itachi couldn't react in time. He slowly pressed his hand on Sasuke's head, who was hugging him, and gently touched it a few times. Unknowingly, the child who could barely reach his chest was now almost as tall as him. But although it has been so long, Sasuke is still so attached to his child. For so many years, Itachi, who had been blocking his heart and showing a cold expression in front of Sasuke, slowly melted the frost on his face at this moment. The two didn't know what to say to each other. They just clumsily enjoyed each other's warmth that had been separated for several years. Chapter 457. Oni-san, I want to help you. For so many years, you have faced the threat from Akatsuki and would leave alone. I don't know the specific situation, but I know very well that you must have had a hard time over the years. So I'm here, let me help you. Okay? Feeling Itachi's body temperature, although he was still very attached to this feeling, Sasuke forced himself to break free from such warmth. When Sasuke learned about Itachi, Sasuke had already decided to help Itachi, and such a decision would never be easily changed. Hearing Sasuke's words, Itachi's eyes were inevitably moved. Has his brother grown into a person who can help him? But Itachi didn't immediately agree to Sasuke's request, because Itachi was very clear about how deep the darkness he faced was. The dark world in front of him was like a bottomless abyss. As long as he dared to poke his head out a little, he may be pulled in by the claws and teeth extended from the abyss. Itachi didn't want his brother to experience such a life of treading on thin ice. It's too late, Sasuke. Looking at the blurred Sasuke in front of him, Itachi said to Sasuke, You should know by now, right? Uchiha clan's Kekkei Genkai Sharingan is not the end of the 3 Tomo Sharingan. Even the Manjikyu Sharingan I have now is only an incomplete existence. It is precisely because it is incomplete that I have to pay a price every time I use it. Over the years, for various reasons, I have used my Manjikyu Sharingan a lot, and now my eyes can hardly see anything. The exhaustion of my eye power has also caused my body to be riddled with holes. I don't have long to live. With that said, Itachi even covered his mouth and coughed violently. His originally pale face became even more unsightly at this moment. Sasuke heard Itachi's words and immediately said to Itachi, Oni-san, I'll take you out of here. Let's go to Nangong-sensei, let's go to Tsunade-sama, let's go to the famous or hidden doctors in the ninja world. As long as I can cure you, no matter what it is, I can do it. She had just met her brother, and she had so many things to tell her brother, but her brother directly told her that he would not live for long. No matter from which perspective, Sasuke felt that he couldn't accept such a fact at all. Seeing that Sasuke didn't listen to him at all, Itachi could only shake his head. If he really had a chance to live, how could he not look for it? After all, this was a world where his younger brother and his parents existed. But it's impossible. It's impossible. Sasuke gently waved his hand and removed Tsukuyomi's space. Sasuke and Itachi returned to the real world. Looking at Itachi, who looked weaker in front of him, Sasuke's eyes were full of unbearable madness. I don't. I must save you. I must save you. To save you. Sasuke to save Sasuke. Looking at Sasuke's appearance, Itachi's face reappeared with a slightly stiff but very gentle smile that has been missing for many years. Just let me help you for the last time. My dear brother. Finally, Itachi no longer called Sasuke stupid brother, but dear brother, that Sasuke missed for a long time. Sasuke's face instantly froze, no longer with anger, no longer with madness, no longer with pity. All emotions were replaced by dullness. Itachi looked at Sasuke, completely ignoring that his eyes had begun to bleed, and he still urged the power of his Manjikyu Sharingan. Holding Yata no Kagami in his left hand and Totsuka sword in his right hand, Itachi used Susanu's ultimate Susanoo. Itachi's body was wrapped by Susanoo and instantly rose a lot from the ground. Controlling Susanoo to raise the Totsuka sword in his hand high, Itachi said to Sasuke, Although you succeeded in making Orochimaru's reincarnation jutsu fail, you didn't completely eliminate Orochimaru's influence on you. You still have Orochimaru's aura. Once the time is right, Orochimaru may reoccupy your body. So, this will be the last time I help you, my dear brother. In the future, you must be more careful, because your life will not only be your life, but also someone else will live because of you. Although Itachi didn't say it clearly, Sasuke knew that Itachi entrusted his parents' lives in his hands, hoping that he could take good care of them. Sasuke wanted to open his mouth and agree to his brother's last request, but his throat seemed to be blocked, and he couldn't spit out anything. He could only let a few unknown sobs and drops of tears flow from Sasuke's eyes. Maybe this is the only way to let Sasuke vent the sadness and heartache in his chest. Goodbye, my brother. Goodbye, my parents. Goodbye, with Leaf where I grew up. Goodbye. This ninja world that made me suffer, made me love and hate. The moment Totsuka's sword was waved, the whole world seemed to have been silent for Sasuke and Itachi. Without physical pain and pressure, Sasuke and Itachi hugged each other tightly just like before in Tsukuyomi space. A huge sword blade, whether real or illusory, passed through Sasuke's body, and a vague white phantom was pulled out of Sasuke's body. Under the guidance of Totsuka's sword, it was stuffed into the wine gourd at Susanu's waist and sealed. Itachi looked at Sasuke, who fell to the ground with a gratified smile on his face. Fortunately, at least in the end, I can finally show my feelings in front of my brother. But I'm really cunning. She clearly knew that the days ahead would only be more difficult, but she still abandoned her younger brother and went to the Pure Land that stood aloof from worldly affairs. Just think of this as my last little selfishness, right? Chapter 458. When Totsuka's sword took away the remaining power of Orochimaru in Sasuke's body, Itachi looked at Sasuke standing in front of him, and finally closed his eyes slowly. Although there were still tears of blood on his cheeks due to overuse of Sharingan, Itachi's expression at this moment was extraordinarily peaceful. It was like the heavy burden that he had been carrying for several years was lifted at this moment, and the sense of relaxation from the soul filled Itachi's face. Without the supply of power, Itachi's Susanoo also slowly dissipated. Wisps of chakra flame drifted out from Susanu's body, and Itachi's originally high body also lost its power and began to slowly fall. Watching Itachi fall from mid-air, Sasuke hurried forward a few steps to catch Itachi's body. Spreading his arms, he hugged his brother, who he had been relying on since childhood, in his arms. Feeling his brother's body temperature passing a little bit, the three tomo in Sasuke's eyes turned faster and faster. From childhood to adulthood, it was his brother who protected him. Later, there was the bloody night of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke once thought that all the things he could rely on disappeared without a trace, and from then on, he could only rely on himself. But after knowing the truth, Sasuke found that he was still protected by his brother. After eliminating Orochimaru and forming the Snake Squad, Sasuke just hoped that he could no longer rely on Itachi's protection as a child. Sasuke hoped that he could help his brother with something. However, she had clearly just seen her brother, whom she had not seen for a long time. She had clearly just hugged her brother in her arms. Clearly, she still had countless words that she wanted to tell her brother in her heart. However, her brother had left her just like that, preventing her from saying those words. In the end, am I still the child protected by my brother? No. I can't do this. I'm absolutely not willing to accept such an ending. I want to save my brother's life. There are so many magical ninjutsu and medical skills in this world. As long as I can find the right way, I will be able to resurrect my brother. He had to say everything that he wanted to say. Thinking of this, Sasuke grabbed his brother's hand and shook it hard. It seemed that he was determined to pull his brother back from the underworld. His eyes were full of determination. The masked man hoodlum's figure appeared not far from Sasuke. The only Sharingan under the mask was staring at Sasuke's eyes. Obviously, the rotation speed of the three tomo had reached the extreme, but there was still no sign of connecting. It seemed that Sasuke himself was resisting accepting his brother's death. This is really troublesome. The masked man hoodlum took a few steps forward, wanting to go to Sasuke's side. But before he moved, Sasuke seemed to have noticed Hoodlum's existence. A pair of high-speed Sharingans stared at Hoodlum, who was wearing the Akatsuki uniform with black background and red clouds. What an amazing intuition! Hoodlum's heart was slightly surprised by Sasuke's intuition. After all, he was very confident that with his ability, even if it was a ninja like Watergate, as long as he didn't actively expose his aura, he wouldn't be discovered. But Sasuke was able to directly detect his presence. This wasn't something that a ninja's perception ability could do. Sasuke also quietly concealed his inner surprise, a pair of eyes staring at Hoodlum's figure. He could clearly see this person standing there, but he couldn't sense his aura at all. If it wasn't for the fact that he had cultivated the sword light and had an inexplicable premonition of danger, he probably wouldn't have been able to discover this person's existence. And the most important thing was this person's eyes. Although Hoodlum deliberately concealed his eyes, just the outline of the music was enough to see that Hoodlum's eyes weren't the 3 Tomo Sharingan state he saw last time, but the shape of Manjikyu Sharingan that had undergone a certain shape change. In the previous battle with Deidara, Sasuke also saw Hoodlum, but at that time, Hoodlum almost didn't use any special abilities, and didn't show such a strange state of changing his aura into nothingness and Manjikyu Sharingan. You again. Slowly putting Itachi's body in his arms on the ground, Sasuke took out a signal flare from his arms and fired it into the sky. At the same time, he slowly unsheathed the silver-white long sword behind his waist and held it in his hand, looking at the nihility in front of him with vigilance. You don't need to summon your teammates to guard your brother's body. After all, for me, Itachi Uchiha's Manjikyu Sharingan is useless. The masked man Hoodlum was telling the truth, because Manjikyu Sharingan itself can only be transplanted between close relatives, and then evolve into eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. And Hoodlum wasn't willing to give up his Manjikyu Sharingan with space ability, so Itachi's body was really useless to Hoodlum. I came here to help you, so that you can truly inherit the legacy your brother left for you, so that you can have a real Sharingan. When Hoodlum spoke, he also used a certain genjutsu technique, so there was an inexplicable sense of bewitchment in his tone. But no matter what kind of genjutsu it was just a small trick for Sharingan. Looking at Hoodlum standing opposite him with a little contempt, Sasuke's eyes unconsciously had an indelible killing intent. I don't want to listen to such superfluous words, and I don't need to listen to them. Since you're so secretive, it proves that you're not a good person. For someone like you who obviously has other thoughts, you can't get my trust. Just as Sasuke finished this sentence, the 3 members of the Snake Squad, Hanrin, Mizuki, and Libra Yugo also appeared beside Sasuke. When Shueiwe, who was originally somewhat frivolous, saw Hoodlum's Red Cloud Organization uniform, the smile on his face disappeared. Hey Sasuke, don't tell me we're gonna fight Akatsuki again. Glancing at Hoodlum standing opposite him, Mizuki continued. Although this guy looked like a coward last time, now it seems that he's not that simple. Chapter 459. Humph. When Red Lotus saw Hoodlum, she sensed that something was wrong with him, but her fighting spirit didn't diminish at all. Red crystals that looked like powder wrapped around Red Lotus' hands. No matter what happened, since he's standing on the opposite side of us, we'll just have to fight to the death. Shueiwe, you are too cowardly. Although Red Lotus was a woman, she was very fond of fighting. Seeing Shueiwe's timid and petty appearance, Red Lotus ridiculed her. Beside Red Lotus, Yugo, who was wearing brown linen clothes, looked at Shueiwe. Although he didn't say anything, black runes slowly covered Yugo's body. Obviously, he was ready to fight. Shueiwe seemed to be very unconvinced. He gritted his teeth and looked at Hong Lian and Juwu. He said to them with a bit of displeasure, "Don't be so arrogant. Are the 2 of you so stupid that you didn't notice that this guy is completely different from before? That kind of dangerous aura can be said to be overwhelming. In such a situation, you still want to fight with such a person who is hiding who knows how many trump cards." After saying this, Suigetsu also looked at Sasuke, seemingly hoping that Sasuke, who had always been very calm, could say something to stop these 2 people's impulsive actions. However, Sasuke not only didn't open his mouth to persuade Red Lotus and Yugo to retreat, but instead, he took a step forward with his long sword, and the battle chi on his body soared into the sky. Suigetsu looked at Sasuke's appearance and naturally knew that Sasuke had no intention of backing down. He could only press his head helplessly and said to his 3 teammates who had already lost their heads, "What do you want me to do? If you guys die, don't blame me for abandoning you guys and running away alone." Although he said that he could escape at any time, Suigetsu took out the Zanpakuto on his back and pointed the sharp Zanpakuto in the direction of Hoodlum. His fighting spirit didn't lose to his teammates, Sasuke, Red Lotus, and Yugo. Looking at the state of the 4 people on Sasuke's side, Hoodlum seemed to be very impatient and shouted, "It's really troublesome. I'm not interested in fighting with you guys. Does no one believe the truth these days?" After saying that, Hoodlum took out a scroll that looked very old. On the cover of the scroll, there was a pattern of 3 Tomo Sharingan, and on the shaft of the scroll, there was a pattern of a round fan representing the Uchiha clan. Hoodlum casually threw the scroll at Sasuke's feet and continued to speak to Sasuke. "I can't help it if you don't believe me now, but I can assure you that I don't have any bad intentions. All I want is for you to live up to Itachi's last request. This scroll contains everything you need to know and how to find me. Once you've made up your mind, come and find me." After saying this, Hoodlum's figure was sucked into a vortex, leaving no trace behind. Obviously, Hoodlum had left, but Sasuke still didn't relax. Until Hoodlum's figure disappeared for 3 minutes, Sasuke inserted the silver sword in his hand into the ground to support his body. Sasuke's face instantly became pale, as if he had consumed a lot of energy. Just now, when Itachi swept Sasuke's body with Tatsuka's sword, although he successfully took away Orochimaru's fragments lurking in Sasuke's body, Orochimaru's residual power and Susanu's Tatsuka sword went through a fierce battle in Sasuke's body. Sasuke's physical strength and chakra were greatly consumed. When he saw Hoodlum just now, Sasuke also forced himself not to show his weakness in front of Hoodlum. "Sasuke, are you okay?" Seeing Sasuke's obviously abnormal face, Yugo walked to Sasuke's side and stretched out his hand to support Sasuke. Sasuke's snake team is actually not that cohesive. Among the 3, the most loyal to Sasuke is actually Yugo, who has always been silent and dull. Feeling the powerlessness in his body, Sasuke slowly shook his head and murmured softly in his mouth, "I'm sorry. I didn't want to use the power of Nangong-sensei, but it seems that I have to use the power of Nangong-sensei." Looking up, Sasuke said to Yugo, "Yugo, there is a red jade pendant in my ninja tool bag. Take it out and crush it." Although Yugo didn't understand why Sasuke asked him to do this, he still obeyed Sasuke's words and took out a jade pendant that looked as red as blood from Sasuke's ninja tool bag. He carved a long sword on the jade pendant, as well as a blood flower pattern. Yugo didn't carefully observe how beautiful this jade pendant, which seemed to be made of a special material, was, but he directly crushed the jade pendant. The jade pendant fragments seemed to emit an imperceptible energy fluctuation, and then Sasuke said to Red Lotus and Suigetsu, "Let's take a break here." Red Lotus and Suigetsu nodded and formed a triangular battle formation with Yugo to protect Sasuke. Not long after, Red Lotus's eyebrows were slightly wrinkled together, because in Red Lotus's perception, there were more than a dozen people with unknown auras rushing quickly towards the direction of the 4 of them. Red Lotus began to mobilize chakra in his body, and he was obviously ready to fight. But Sasuke pressed down Red Lotus's hands that were already on his chest to form a seal, and shook his head gently at Red Lotus. After a while, the auras that Red Lotus perceived had already reached Sasuke and others. After seeing the red jade pendant fragment in Yugo's hand, the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples, who were wearing various costumes representing the 5 elements, also half-knelt on the ground and shouted very respectfully. A total of 17 disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion Ruijin Altar, Aoki Altar, Aquamarine Altar, Scarlet Flame Altar, and Thick Earth Altar have come to pay their respects. The blood-colored jade pendant that Sasuke asked Yugo to crush just now was the means given to Sasuke by Nangong to summon the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples. It must not be used unless it is a critical moment, because this jade pendant represents the highest order of Nangong. As long as there is this jade pendant, the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples can do anything. Chapter 460. In the headquarters of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the leader of the Greenwood Altar, Old Man Aoki, was standing in front of a sickbed, looking at Itachi's lifeless body with a solemn expression. The Bloodrobe Pavilion's head order allowed anyone in Bloodrobe Pavilion to unconditionally carry out the orders of the holder, and it was the same for Aoki. After Sasuke met the 17 disciples of Five-Element Altar from Bloodrobe Pavilion, he ordered his brother Itachi Uchiha's body to be brought to Bloodrobe Pavilion's headquarters as soon as possible. After meeting Aogi Altar Lord Aogi, who was in charge of logistics in Bloodrobe Pavilion, Sasuke left and asked Aogi to do his best to save his brother's life. However, although Aogi was good at medicine, he didn't have the ability to reverse life and death. For Itachi Uchiha, who was already dead, Aogi also expressed his powerlessness. But Sasuke, who had fallen into a kind of paranoia, how could he listen to Aogi's words? He just blindly forced Aogi to do his best to save Itachi Uchiha. Aogi had no choice but to contact Nangong, who was far away in Woodleaf Ninja Village, through Clearwater Altar's channel as soon as possible, hoping that his head could come and persuade the kid who held the head order. After receiving the news, Nangong also explained some things, then immediately opened the teleportation formation and came to Bloodrobe Pavilion. After opening the door, Nangong walked into the room where Itachi Uchiha's body was stored. After seeing Nangong, Aogi also quickly saluted Nangong. Head, this subordinate is incompetent, there is really no way. Nangong waved his hand, indicating that Aogi didn't need to say anything. After he understood the situation, he slowly walked to Sasuke's side, put his hand on Sasuke's shoulder, and said to Sasuke, "Sasuke, it seems that you are very unwilling to accept this." Sasuke didn't answer Nangong's words. He just raised his head and looked at Nangong with a hopeful face, as if he hoped that Nangong could tell him that there was a way to bring his brother back to life. Seeing Sasuke's sad and stubborn eyes, Nangong slightly shook his head and said to Sasuke, "Haven't you accepted the reality? Your brother, my friend Itachi Uchiha, has left this world." Sasuke's words was like a hammer, Sasuke's heart, making Sasuke felt that his breathing hats. In his impression was sensei. I don't. Both of him and I Uchiha of him and I of us robe. It's too selfish of Itachi to leave this world like this. Facing Nangong, Sasuke finally put down his heart slowly and said such words. Yes, Sasuke felt that his brother was a bit cunning. Obviously, Itachi was still facing so many difficulties and obstacles, but he still irresponsibly left this world after saying all the words of asking him to do. At this moment, Sasuke was actually very confused, because when he was young, Sasuke had been chasing the back of his brother's genius. He only hoped that his father could praise him as much as he praised his brother. Later, the Uchiha clan incident happened, and the culprit of the incident, his brother, who he had been chasing, became his biggest enemy. In order to defeat his brother and get the truth, Sasuke tried his best. Even if he joined Orochimaru and gave up his companions, Sasuke had no regrets. But now, although he has been changing his role, Itachi Uchiha, who has always been his target, will never come back. At this moment, Sasuke's heart was full of confusion after losing his goal. That's why Sasuke refused to accept the fact that his brother was dead and wanted to find a way to bring his brother back to life. But now, Nangong ruthlessly tore off the last layer of Sasuke's deceit, and Sasuke finally said his true thoughts. Looking at Sasuke in front of him, Nangong's heart was full of melancholy. How old is Sasuke this year? 15 or 16 years old. Although for a ninja, this age is no longer young, but at this age, there is still a desire to rely on a person's mentality. For Sasuke, presumably, Itachi is the existence he wants and is most willing to rely on. Sasuke. No one can accompany you to the end. Looking at Sasuke, Nangongja said to Sasuke with some serious words, "This world is a very cruel world, and everyone's life is threatened in all kinds of ways. Maybe in your opinion, your brother and even me are existences you can rely on. But we can only let you rely on us for a while, not for a lifetime. Your life is your life after all. I know, after losing your brother, you instantly felt that you lost a pillar you could rely on. I know that feeling of powerlessness, and I can make up a lot of excuses to make you feel that I have the ability to bring Itachi back to your side. But that would be letting down Itachi's painstaking efforts, and all of Itachi's efforts would be in vain. So, I don't want to comfort you, but I want you to see the truth clearly. Sadness is never solved by escaping. There is only one way to solve sadness, and that is, face it." After saying these words, Nangongja waved his hand and signaled the disciples of Bloodcloak Pavilion in the room and the 3 members of Sasuke's snake team to leave the room together, leaving some space for Sasuke and Itachi. Yugo, Red Lotus, and Suigetsu looked at Sasuke, who seemed to be a little lost, and could only walk out of the room helplessly. Separation of life and death is the most difficult thing for human beings to face. Such emotions, regardless of whether one is a ninja or a civilian, as long as there is still humanity, there is no way to completely eliminate such emotions. Sasuke seemed to notice that everyone walked out, and slowly moved his steps to Itachi's side. Looking at Itachi's face that still had a bit of relief, Sasuke's eyes slowly thawed, and drops of tears flowed from Sasuke's eyes. When was the last time he cried because of sadness? Sasuke didn't know, but Sasuke just wanted to cry wantonly now. Chapter 461. Drops of tears squeezed out from Sasuke's eyes, and tears continued to flow down Sasuke's cheeks, leaving a shallow tear stain. But Sasuke didn't cry out any sound. This wasn't because Sasuke could control his emotions, but because Sasuke couldn't control himself at all. The sadness and pain were choked in his throat, so tears seemed to be the only way for Sasuke to vent his inner feelings. Drops of tears kept flowing from Sasuke's eyes, across his cheeks, and dripped to the ground. Sasuke didn't know how many tears he cried, but warm liquid never stopped flowing from his eyes. If someone could stand opposite Sasuke, it wouldn't be difficult to find that Sasuke's tears had unknowingly turned into blood tears, and bright red traces of blood were left on Sasuke's face. The 3 Tomo Sharingan, which had already shown signs of transforming into Manjikyu Sharingan, also rotated at a high speed at this moment, and gradually the 3 Tomo continued to expand and gradually connected together. The outline of a 6-pointed star appeared in Sasuke's eyes, and even the sadness couldn't cover the brilliance of this pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. Although Sasuke couldn't see what happened to his eyes, the sudden appearance of a powerful eye power completely different from the 3 Tomo Sharingan told Sasuke that his eyes had evolved again. Only by personally participating in the death of a loved one can the cursed power be awakened. In Sasuke's view, if it wasn't to expel the remnants of Orochimaru's power from his body, his brother would never have lost his life like this. What's the difference between such a scene and killing his brother with his own hands? Perhaps he had cried enough, or perhaps he was tired of crying. Sasuke raised his sleeve and wiped his face, wiping the tears that were already all over his face. Sasuke took out the scroll that Hoodlum had thrown to him and gently opened it. Sasuke found that it was filled with dense patterns. If ordinary people saw such patterns, they would be dazzled and dizzy in less than 2 minutes. But Sasuke, who had just awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan, didn't close his Manjikyu Sharingan. These dense patterns slowly surged in Sasuke's eyes at this moment, forming a character. Sasuke carefully looked at the hidden text in the scroll, and for a moment he was fascinated. The patterns in the scroll were copied from the stone tablet in the ancestral hall of the Uchiha clan. The stone tablet recorded some mysteries about the Sharingan and some secrets of the ninja world. The origin of the Uchiha clan and the mystery of Manjikyu Sharingan were naturally also recorded in it. Sasuke looked at the scroll and whispered softly, "Eyes of loved one. Eternal Manjikyu, eternal Manjikyu." Sasuke finally understood what Hoodlum said about his brother's last legacy. By transplanting his brother's Manjikyu Sharingan, he can make his Manjikyu evolve again, eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. He doesn't have to worry about his dojutsu drying up, and it may even give birth to a new power. After a short whisper, there was a long silence. Sasuke just quietly looked at the scroll in his hand that recorded all kinds of secrets, and his eyes passed over his brother from time to time. Outside the room where Sasuke was located, the 3 members of the Snake Squad and Nangongja were staring at the door, waiting for Sasuke to appear. The 3 members of the Snake Squad looked very nervous. After all, such a squad actually existed with Sasuke as the core. Once Sasuke couldn't accept the fact that his brother died, then such a squad naturally couldn't be talked about. For the 3 members of Sasuke's team, the Snake Squad was an important existence to achieve their respective goals. Once such a squad no longer exists, it also means that their goals will be difficult to achieve. Nangongja looked very calm. After all, Nangongja also watched Sasuke walk step by step to this extent. Nangongja also understood the confusion and pain that Sasuke experienced. Because of this, Nangongja was more aware of how strong Sasuke's heart was. There was no way to completely defeat Sasuke's suffering. For Sasuke, it was an opportunity to go further. Squeak! The door of the room where Sasuke was located gently opened, and Sasuke walked out with firm steps. Seeing Sasuke, the 3 members of the Snake Squad immediately greeted him. Although they were worried, no one spoke, because Sasuke's eyes were staring at Nangongja at the moment. Obviously, he had something to say. Slowly walking to Nangongja's side, Sasuke suddenly bowed to Nangongja, and his proud spine bent down at the moment. "Nangong-sensei, thank you. If it weren't for you, I might have to do something that even I can't forgive myself because of the sadness and hatred in my heart. It was you who gave me the opportunity to let my brother leave this world with a smile. It was also you who gave my family a chance to save their lives. Although I hope that I can help you more, at this moment, I can only say such a soft thank you to you," Sasuke said sincerely. The more Sasuke grew, the more he understood how unfathomable his Kenjutsu sensei was. However, Nangongja's strength directly made Sasuke have no way to repay Nangongja. After all, what Sasuke could do, Nangongja could do even better. So Sasuke could only say such a soft thank you to Nangongja for telling him the truth and saving his parents' lives. Nangongja patted Sasuke's shoulder, just like how he treated Sasuke when he was a child, and said with a caring tone, "Don't be like this. Sensei helped you not only because you are my disciple, but I also gained a lot from it, so you don't have to take my motives too seriously. But I see that you have come out of the sadness of Itachi's departure, and it seems that you have redefined your goal, which makes me feel more gratified." Unlike the previous Sasuke who was full of hatred and paranoia, the current Sasuke's eyes were much clearer. Nangongja liked this look very much, so Nangongja's face also had a little smile. Chapter 462. Nangongji-sensei, I've decided to join Akatsuki. Not for any other reason. I just hope that my brother's work won't end in vain. Furthermore, it seems that I can only make greater progress if I go to that suspicious person's place. Sasuke said his decision to Nangongji-sensei. Sasuke, who has been following Orochimaru, has actually been exposed to a lot of information that is difficult for ordinary ninjas to access. Although it seems like a pool of stagnant water now, Sasuke naturally saw the hidden waves surging in the shinobi world. A catastrophe that can't be resisted by a single person is quietly brewing, and Akatsuki, as the core of the storm, is naturally the place to understand and even eliminate such a catastrophe. Nangongji-sensei took Sasuke's hand and led him step by step to the front of the Bloodcloth Pavilion's gate. "Since it's something you've decided on, then go on bravely. You have been very smart since you were a child, and after so many years of experience, I also believe that you can be responsible for the decisions you make, so I won't say anything unnecessary to you. After all, I also hate nagging. You just need to remember that no matter when you need me or the Bloodcloth Pavilion's help, you must tell me. With that, Nangongji-sensei took out a carved red jade pendant from his arms and stuffed it in Sasuke's hand. It was the chief token that represented the Bloodcloth Pavilion's prestige. Looking at the precious chief token that was once again given to Sasuke by Nangongji-sensei, Aoki, who has been on the side, opened his eyes wide in disbelief. If it weren't for Sasuke's Uchiha clan bloodline and age, Aoki would have thought that Sasuke was likely to be Nangongji-sensei's illegitimate child. Otherwise, how could such a token be given to Sasuke again and again? Looking at the chief token that was given to him by Nangongji-sensei, Sasuke didn't refuse. Instead, he solemnly received the chief token in his hand. Sasuke was very clear that what he will face later is likely to be impossible to deal with alone, so accepting Nangongji-sensei's kindness is actually a matter of course. Isn't it? When the three members of the Snake Squad saw Sasuke receive the chief token from Nangongji-sensei, they immediately felt relieved. After seeing the size of the Bloodcloth Pavilion and the strong in it, the three people were very clear how powerful the Bloodcloth Pavilion was. Such a token is no different from a life-saving means. Originally, they were worried that Sasuke wouldn't accept because of his pride. So after seeing Sasuke accept such a token, they also cast a grateful look at Nangongji-sensei. Patting Sasuke's shoulder, Nangongji said to Sasuke very freely, "Well, since you have already decided on the path you want to take, there is no need to hesitate. When you joined Orochimaru, I didn't stop you. This time, I won't stop you either. Work hard and achieve your goal." Hearing Nangongji-sensei's words, Sasuke didn't have any pretentious expression. After nodding to Nangongji-sensei, he walked out of the Bloodcloth Pavilion's gate with his teammates and took firm and powerful steps towards the deep forest. Seeing Sasuke's figure disappear, Nangongji-sensei finally turned his head and said to Old Man Aoki, who had been standing behind him and obviously had something to say, "Altar Leader Aoki, what do you want to say to me now?" Nangongji knew that Old Man Aoki, a veteran of the Bloodcloak Pavilion, must have some grudges in his heart when he saw him giving the Bloodcloak Pavilion chief token to Sasuke again and again. So he didn't hide anything and asked Old Man Aoki. After all, Old Man Aoki has been with Nangongji-sensei for a long time, so he naturally has some understanding of Nangongji-sensei's character. Although Nangongji-sensei's mind is very flexible most of the time, he still hates the way of speaking in a roundabout way, so Old Man Aoki naturally said what he wanted to say. "Leader, I really don't understand why you helped this kid from the Uchiha clan again and again. The reputation of the Uchiha clan in the ninja world is obvious to all. That is, a group of fickle and greedy wolves. There is no possibility of feeding them. And although this kid's aptitude is good, it's only good. Although he could be called a prodigy among his peers in the Blood Clothing Pavilion, that was all there was to it. You invested so much in him, I really don't think it's worth it." Listening to Old Man Aoki's words, Nangongji-sensei also nodded his head from time to time, because what Old Man Aoki said is indeed true. There are countless geniuses in this world, and it's easy for them to grow up after getting the right training. Sasuke is not so unique after all. Nangongji-sensei's efforts are really not enough to make ends meet. Altar Leader Aoki, I understand what you mean, but I don't regret such a decision. Sasuke can be regarded as a child that I have seen since he was a child. For a cultivator, talent, hard work, and opportunities are all indispensable factors for growth. But I see the trace of destiny in Sasuke. I always have a hunch. Sasuke may be the next Uchiha Madara of the Uchiha clan, or even an existence that surpasses Uchiha Madara. This hunch comes without a reason, but it makes me extremely convinced. Now it seems that I have paid a lot, but in fact most of it is insignificant. Our Blood Garment Pavilion and myself didn't suffer too many losses. Using such a small amount of resources in exchange for the friendship of a possible future super expert is actually worth it. If my hunch is true, our Bloodcloth Pavilion will naturally make a lot of money. If my premonition is not true, Then just treat it as me, the head disciple, being obsessed for a moment and making a small foolish move. Nangongji-sensei's words have already reached this point. Even old man Aoki had nothing more to say. Thinking about it carefully, even if Sasuke really misused the chief token, what kind of consequences will it lead to? At worst, they will just sacrifice a few disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion. If they really want to drag the Bloodcloth Pavilion into the undercurrent of the ninja world, it's useless to rely on a chief token that has more symbolic meaning than practical significance. As for whether Nangongji-sensei can do well in his position as the chief of the Bloodcloth Pavilion, hasn't it been enough to prove it over the years? Chapter 463. After leaving the Bloodcloak Pavilion, Sasuke took his 3 teammates to the address recorded in the scroll given to him by Hoodlum. During the journey, Sasuke also explained his plan to his 3 teammates. After all, Akatsuki is not a gathering place of good men and women, and the danger involved in it is self-evident. After Orochimaru escaped from Akatsuki, he could only hide from Akatsuki's pursuit. I know that what I do is very dangerous, and I also know that each of you chose to follow me for your own reasons. For my wish, you put your life on the balance. Such a thing is not what I expect. So now I'm giving you a chance. If you don't want to take risks with me, you can leave now. Seeing that his group was about to reach the meeting place indicated by Hoodlum, Sasuke suddenly stopped his footsteps and looked at his 3 teammates who had been following him silently all the way. If it was before under Orochimaru's command, such a question would never exist. Sasuke would only use all means to force his 3 teammates to take risks with him. But now, Sasuke's mentality has changed quietly. Human life seems to have some value in Sasuke's eyes that can't be ignored. Sasuke's question also stunned Hanrin, Suigetsu, and Yugo. Watching his 2 companions fall into silence, Suigetsu touched the huge Zanpakuto on his back with his hand. His eyes seemed to have some reminiscence as he said to Sasuke, "Oh, I didn't expect that the 2 bravest members in our team would actually shrink back this time." With a sarcastic smile, Suigetsu's eyes swept over Hanrin and Yugo. "I actually don't like troublesome things. Things like joining a dangerous place like Akatsuki. If it's a normal time, I will definitely refuse without hesitation. But if you ask me now, am I willing to join Akatsuki with you? I will tell you with certainty that I am willing. My brother has been a genius since he was a child. Everyone I know since I was a child would praise my brother in front of me without hesitation. He skillfully used the 7 secret swords of the mist-hidden village to complete a difficult task. Such a brother is simply the most dazzling sun in the sky. I once thought that I would be stung by my brother's brilliance in my life, but who would have thought that such a dazzling brother would die so quietly? After being caught by Orochimaru, I felt very confused. I thought that I might only be locked in a narrow cultivation tank and become Orochimaru's plaything. At this point, Shueiyue's face revealed a very rare expression of powerlessness. It was a sharp contrast to her usual cheerful appearance. So even the seemingly happy and lively Shueiyue could actually show such an expression? But soon, Suigetsu regained his usual smiling appearance. After reaching out and pointing in the direction of Sasuke, Suigetsu continued, "It's you, Uchiha Sasuke, who rescued me from that kind of predicament. It allowed me to obtain the great beheading blade and allowed me to find the path after that. So, no matter what kind of danger we will encounter, I, Suigetsu, will accompany you to the end." We agreed to collect all the 7 swords of the mist-hidden village. You can't just turn a blind eye to the shark face in the Akatsuki. After listening to Suigetsu's words, Sasuke didn't know what kind of expression to make in response to Suigetsu's trust and following. After all, he had a lot of selfish motives when he recruited them. Sasuke could only nod with a pale face, signaling Suigetsu to stand behind him. Suigetsu didn't seem to care. After all, everyone knew Sasuke's character. After listening to Suigetsu's words, Red Lotus also tidied up his hair and said to Sasuke, "Suigetsu, this guy is still so talkative. Such a simple thing, he has to say so much. Since I have decided to be your teammate, How can I give up so easily? No matter what kind of danger he will encounter, I am not afraid. In other words, the more dangerous it is, the happier I feel. Red Lotus looked a little excited, as if she had already imagined the appearance of fighting with countless strong people. That kind of happy mood and rushing out of the room was engraved on Red Lotus's heroic face. Like Suigetsu, Red Lotus also slowly stood behind Sasuke. Sasuke, Red Lotus, and Suigetsu all put their eyes on Yugo, who was still standing in the same place. Yugo scratched his head slightly and seemed to be a little embarrassed and said to Sasuke and the others, "I'm sorry. I'm a very slow person who can't express his feelings. You all said so much, I don't know what to say. But you are people who make me feel like companions. Since you are companions, naturally you can't abandon each other because of a little difficulty. Let's keep going." Turning his head, Sasuke's eyes swept over his three teammates, and unknowingly, his face also quietly climbed up with a smile. He seems to have unknowingly gained a few friends who are worth cherishing for a lifetime. He didn't say much, because Suigetsu, Red Lotus, and Yugo's attitude had already been revealed. Saying one more word in such a situation, Sasuke felt that it would be an insult to his three teammates. So Sasuke just turned his body silently and set foot in the direction of meeting Hoodlum again. Seeing Sasuke's expression, Suigetsu, Red Lotus, and Yugo smiled at each other. They seemed very happy and followed Sasuke's forward steps together. How satisfying and happy it is for a person to be able to find something they are willing to do and someone they are willing to follow in their life. At this moment, Suigetsu, Red Lotus, and Yugo's hearts were filled with a sense of satisfaction. It was this kind of satisfaction that made Suigetsu, Red Lotus, and Yugo feel that they can face any difficulties. After all, they will never be alone from now on, and they will always have their teammates standing by their side. Right? Everyone was actually afraid of being alone. Chapter 464. I knew you would come. Because you are a member of the Uchiha family, you are Itachi's younger brother. Looking at Sasuke, who was slowly walking towards him with his three companions, Hoodlum's eyes flashed with confidence. Ignoring Suigetsu and the others, Hoodlum just looked at Sasuke and said, and Hoodlum's words were naturally heard by Sasuke. When he heard Hoodlum say his brother's name, Sasuke already wanted to pull out his long sword and tell this hypocritical guy, how can he casually mention his brother's name? But Sasuke has grown up. He was no longer the naive and ignorant boy who used to put all his emotions on his face. So he suppressed his anger and kept his cold expression. Sasuke said to Hoodlum, Brother Hoodlum, I'm here, and I agree to your conditions. The so-called conditions were actually very simple. Hoodlum hoped that Sasuke could replace his brother Itachi Uchiha's position and become a member of Akatsuki. After all, Sharingan has a unique advantage in dealing with Bijou. The loss of Itachi has actually hindered Akatsuki's recovery of Bijou. But Hoodlum, who also has Manjikyu Sharingan, can't appear so openly to collect Bijou. Pain, who has Rinnegan, also has to stabilize Akatsuki's situation, so Sasuke, who also has Manjikyu Sharingan, naturally became the best candidate to recruit into Akatsuki. And the Manjikyu Sharingan left by the dead Itachi can push Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan to the height of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Of course, since it's a deal, Sasuke naturally also got a promise that Akatsuki will provide shelter for Sasuke, and Sasuke's snake team will participate in Akatsuki's operations as a semi-mercenary, and not completely become a member of Akatsuki. So, Itachi's eyes. Hoodlum's eyes had a bit of light, and his meaning was self-evident. Hoodlum obviously hoped that Sasuke could use Itachi's legacy as soon as possible and turn his eyes into eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Only with enough strength can he complete Akatsuki's tasks more efficiently, right? After hearing Hoodlum's words, Sasuke's originally suppressed anger finally burned uncontrollably. His originally dark eyes were covered with scarlet blood in an instant, and Manjikyu Sharingan in the shape of a hexagram appeared in Sasuke's eyes. Sasuke's eye power was mobilized crazily, and the powerful ninjutsu brought by Manjikyu Sharingan was instantly summoned by Sasuke. although it was only in the form of a skeleton and not a complete body. The aura that seemed to come from ancient times rushed straight toward Hoodlum. Sasuke's Susanoo raised his arm, and the virtual armament Heavenly Hemp Ancient Bow appeared on Susanoo's arm. Under Sasuke's control, Susanoo pulled the bowstring of Heavenly Hemp Ancient Bow with one hand, and the dark Amaterasu flame turned into a black arrow, and the burning arrowhead pointed straight at Hoodlum. Only I can decide these things. Remember the relationship between you and me. You have no right to order me, and no right to dispose of my brother's body. In the face of Sasuke's almost naked threat, Hoodlum not only didn't get angry, but he also laughed. This is what I want. Hoodlum's heart was very clear that Itachi was a taboo for Sasuke, and being mentioned by anyone may arouse Sasuke's anger. But after seeing Sasuke, Hoodlum intentionally or unintentionally mentioned Itachi Uchiha's name, with the purpose of testing Sasuke's reaction. At the beginning, Sasuke's calm appearance actually made Hoodlum's heart very uncalm, because such a calm attitude was not what Hoodlum wanted to see. Therefore, Hoodlum could only continue to use Itachi's body to stimulate Sasuke with Itachi's Manjikyu Sharingan. Fortunately, this time, it was not beyond Hoodlum's expectations, and Sasuke burst into a strong anger. Even under the stimulation of such emotions, Sasuke actually used Susanoo with his newly acquired Manjikyu Sharingan, and even used Heavenly Hemp Ancient Bow, which was not inferior to Yada no Kagami and Tatsuka Sword. When the arrow condensed by the dark Amaterasu flame pointed at him, Hoodlum's heart was filled with the satisfaction of controlling others. Put away your Susanoo. Looking at Sasuke, Hoodlum seemed to admit defeat and said softly to Sasuke, "You just opened Manjikyu Sharingan. Although you can use Susanoo after reading the scroll without any systematic training, you still need to use it. But now you are using a lot of your eye power at the cost of forcibly using such a move which will cause great damage to your eyes. Although you and I are not friends, we are far from enemies. You don't need to pay such a price." Hoodlum also stretched out his hand and pointed at Sasuke's eyes. Because using Susanoo at this moment caused a certain degree of burden on his eyes, Sasuke's eyes were bleeding. After hearing Hoodlum's words, Sasuke seemed to stabilize his emotions. He closed his eyes and turned his Manjikyu Sharingan into the original dark color, and the huge Susanoo summoned by Sasuke slowly disappeared without a trace. Hoodlum opened his hand, and a space vortex appeared in Hoodlum's hand, and 4 uniforms representing Akatsuki's black background and red clouds also appeared in Hoodlum's hand. Slowly walking to Sasuke's side, Hoodlum handed the 4 uniforms in his hand to Sasuke and said to Sasuke, "Although you belong to the nature of mercenaries, after all, you represent our Akatsuki, so you still have to wear these uniforms. Presumably, you still have Itachi Uchiha's ring. That ring has a lot of functions, and it will also be a tool for us to give you tasks. From today on, Uchiha Sasuke, you will be Akatsuki's new Suzaku." Listening to Hoodlum's words, Sasuke also took out the ring with the word Suzaku written on it, which he took off from Itachi's finger before leaving. Originally, he just wanted to use it as a souvenir, but he didn't expect it to have such a use. Chapter 465. After a short conversation with Hoodlum, Sasuke took his 3 teammates to embark on the first mission of becoming Akatsuki's mercenaries. The mission's destination is the very distant Cloud Village in the Land of Lightning. It seems that Sasuke's team is about to face another difficult battle. In the Land of Fire, with Leaf Village, the sun was still so bright and warm, and every villager's face was filled with joy and happiness. As the highest leader of the village, Yondaime Hokage Watergate was sitting in his office at the moment, discussing this year's Wood Leaf Ninja Training Program and the specific adjustment plan of the Wood Leaf Medical Ninja Training Program with some of his subordinates. Minato and his subordinates argued and discussed some of the details. Although everyone seemed to be arguing until their faces turned red, everyone could feel the light of hope from them, because they all knew that their arguments were not meaningless. On the contrary, an idea they put forward now may become Wood Leaf's policy for the next year. For those who worked in politics, Even a promotion was far less exciting than having one's suggestion adopted and implemented. Just as they were discussing whether to further expand the scope of the Wood Leaf Medical Ninja Training Program and expand the recruitment of ninjas from newly graduated genin to some chunin and even jonin, a knock on the door directly interrupted their conversation. Watergate's face was slightly unhappy, his good-looking eyebrows slightly wrinkled together. He stretched out his hand and waved to his subordinates, indicating them to wait for a moment and then continue the discussion. Watergate slowly walked to the door of his office. Putting his hand on the handle of his door and gently turning the door handle, Watergate raised his head and glanced at the person who interrupted the lively discussion at such a moment. But what Watergate didn't expect was that the person who knocked on the door was not a subordinate who brought him office documents, but his teacher, Jiraiya, who officially married Tsunade not long ago. Since it was Jiraiya, Watergate naturally couldn't just put on a sour face, so he tried his best to make his face look better. Watergate welcomed Jiraiya, who was standing at the door, into his office. Some department heads in the office waiting for Watergate's return saw Jiraiya coming in and greeted him very politely. In the face of these Konoha administrators, Jiraiya wasn't so cold. But they were all congratulating him on his marriage. So of course, Jiraiya couldn't lose face like this. So he smiled at them and exchanged a few words in return. Jiraiya and Tsunade just got married a few days ago. At such a time, he came to find his disciple. Naturally, there should be something important, so Watergate said to his department head, "Everyone, please go back first. We will make an appointment later to continue discussing the modification of the plan." These department heads naturally knew that Watergate had something important to say to their teacher, one of the Wood Leaf Sannin, Jiraiya, so they were very reasonable. After bidding farewell to Watergate and Jiraiya, they also walked out of Hokage's office one by one. After sending away his subordinates, Watergate closed the door of his office. Walking to Jiraiya's side with a little concern, Watergate said to Jiraiya, "Sensei, why are you here at this time? I thought you and Tsunade-sama were going to enjoy the sweet time of your honeymoon." Speaking of sweet time, Watergate's eyes suddenly turned, looked at his teacher, and found that Jiraiya was indeed a little old. As the saying goes, 30 is like a wolf, 40 is like a tiger. Counting the time, Tsunade-sama is also at the age of a wolf and a tiger. Is she my sensei? During this time, Watergate also felt a dull pain in his waist after seeing his wife Shinakushina. After all, everyone is a ninja, and their physical fitness is not ordinary. With a little concern, Watergate took Jiraiya's hand and said to his teacher, "Sensei, don't worry. We are all men, I understand. I have a prescription here that I found before. Although I haven't tried it, I heard that the effect is very significant. Would you like me to give you a prescription to try?" Although Watergate didn't say it explicitly, they were all men, and the meaning of Watergate's words was very clear to Jiraiya. Hearing that someone doubted his ability, even if this person was his disciple, Jiraiya was very upset and said to Watergate, No, the pamphlet that Nangongja gave me before is very effective." Halfway through his words, Jiraiya realized that he seemed to be led astray by his disciple, so after a quick cough, he said to Watergate with a serious face, "I didn't come here to talk to you about such things. It's really a serious matter, do you understand?" Hearing Jiraiya's words, Watergate also put away the evil thoughts in his heart and sat upright facing Jiraiya. Obviously, he was ready to listen to what Jiraiya said. Seeing that Watergate was serious, Jiraiya continued to say to Watergate, "I know that you have been busy with various matters in Wood Leaf Village during this time, but I hope you can spare some time and go to Mount Mayaboku with me." Watergate looked at Jiraiya with a little doubt and asked, "Mount Mayaboku? Is there a new prophecy from Totema Sennin?" Watergate naturally knew about Totema Sennin's prophecy ability of Mount Mayaboku, and in Watergate's mind, this was the only reason why Jiraiya mentioned Mount Mayaboku so seriously. But after hearing Watergate's words, Jiraiya slowly shook his head and said to Watergate, "No, Great Totema Sennin is still sleeping. The reason why I'm going to take you to Mount Mayaboku this time is because I think you should learn Mount Mayaboku's secret sage mode." After the last battle with Pain, I thought that Pain might have other abilities to restore the Rakudo S clones that he had lost. After studying the black stick we brought back, Tsunade also told me that the function of this black stick is actually to conduct chakra. Rakudo's clones are made of corpses, so it's possible to repair or change a body. With your current strength, it's still a bit difficult to deal with Pain's Rakudo, so in order to protect with Leaf, I think it's necessary to take you to Mount Mayaboku to practice Sage Mode. Chapter 466. Sage Mode is a state where you can use natural energy. In this state, you can use natural energy to greatly increase physical activity to increase attack power and defense. At the same time, you can use natural energy to increase physical attack range and perception. Such a state is extremely significant for a person's combat power, just like when Jiraiya fought with Pain's Six Paths doppelganger. In Sage Mode, Jiraiya was able to fight with Pain's Six Paths doppelganger, and he destroyed 5 of his doppelgangers. Moreover, Jiraiya didn't hone his Sage Mode to perfection. In Jiraiya's view, Watergate is far better than him in terms of talent and physical fitness. If he really practices Sage Mode, he will be able to succeed in a very short time, and he may even be able to practice the most perfect Sage Mode in history. In order to deal with the future danger, Jiraiya came to Watergate's office and proposed his idea to Watergate. Jiraiya naturally knows how difficult such a proposal is to realize. Even the most ordinary ninja can only get a period of vacation after completing a lot of tasks. As the leader of Woodleaf Village, Watergate has almost no concept of vacation. Even if he accompanied his son Naruto to practice, Watergate still left his shadow clone in his office. Once there is something important, the shadow clone will automatically disappear and inform Watergate to return to the office to deal with official business. If Watergate agrees to Jiraiya's proposal, then it means that Watergate will have to practice in Mount Mayaboku for a few months or even longer. For Watergate, such a period of time is to push away most or even all of his official business. For the leader of Ninja Village, this is unimaginable. Jiraiya is clear about these things, and Watergate is naturally more clear about it, so Watergate also slowly rubbed his chin with his hand. In the past few days, Watergate has been dealing with various official business in the Hokage's office, and a little stubble has grown on his chin. The roughness brought by the stubble didn't make Watergate feel uncomfortable. Instead, it made Watergate feel calmer. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart again and again, Watergate seemed to be very entangled whether he should go to Mount Mayaboku with Jiraiya or not. As the Hokage, his duty is to protect the Woodleaf Village. Going to Mount Mayaboku to practice Sage Mode and enhance his strength is naturally a way to protect the Woodleaf Village. However, if he abandoned his official duties at Woodleaf and allowed Woodleaf to get into trouble, wouldn't he be failing his duties even more? Teacher? Looking at Jiraiya, Watergate said slowly. After hearing Watergate's slightly heavy tone, Jiraiya's heart slowly sank to the bottom. Yes, after all, Watergate is the Hokage, the leader of Woodleaf Village. It was indeed unimaginable for a person of such status to leave the village that he was determined to protect and go to Mount Mayaboku to cultivate for a few months or even longer. Jiraiya-sensei, I have decided. I hope I can go to Mount Mayaboku to practice Sage Mode. You are right. With my current strength, it is not enough to protect the entire Woodleaf Village. With that, Watergate remembered the masked man who used space ninjutsu when Ninetales attacked, and the ability of 6 Paths of Pain that his sensei described to him. It is indeed not enough to rely on his current strength. But what about Woodleaf? Hearing Watergate say that he wants to go to Mount Mayaboku to practice Sage Mode, Jiraiya was naturally very happy. But Jiraiya still asked his doubts. After all, Woodleaf is also the place that Jiraiya is determined to protect. If Woodleaf is damaged because of reckless actions, Jiraiya will not forgive himself. Don't worry, Sensei. I have considered this problem, so I plan to go to Mount Mayaboku alone. I will leave a shadow clone in Woodleaf Village to deal with daily affairs. As long as I don't fight, I think this shadow clone will be enough to last for several months. As for some important affairs, I will entrust Nara Shikaku and my shadow clone to decide together. And some security issues may trouble you and Sensei's wife. After all, both of you are strong people in Woodleaf. In case of any emergency, you will be enough to stabilize the situation. If it doesn't work, You can let the toad of Mount Myaboku inform me, and I will immediately return to Woodleaf through reverse summoning." Listening to Watergate's words, Jiraiya's hanging heart gradually relaxed. Although this may not be the best plan, it is the best and most practical solution that can be thought of in such a situation. For Watergate's proposal, Jiraiya naturally has no intention to refuse. "Well, you go arrange the relevant matters first, and we will go to Mount Myaboku. When we get there, I will explain to Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, and then I will return to Woodleaf to help you take care of the overall situation." Watergate heard Jiraiya's words and directly made a hand seal to summon a shadow clone. This shadow clone was infused with more than half of Watergate's chakra to maintain the stability of the shadow clone. Then Watergate turned to Jiraiya and said, "We are pressed for time. I know that it takes not only effort to cultivate Sage Mode, but also a lot of time. So let's not waste any second. I will let the shadow clone take care of these things. Let's go to Mount Myaboku now." Although Watergate's tone was very flat, there was still a bit of urgency and tension in it. Now for Watergate, perhaps Sage Mode is the fastest way to increase his strength. Only by grasping such power in his own hands, Watergate can better guard Woodleaf, guard his family, and guard his loved ones. Watergate and Jiraiya stood together and made hand seals together. Reverse summoning jutsu was completed in an instant. A cloud of smoke rose, and the figures of Jiraiya and Watergate also disappeared in it. Seeing that his main body had left, Watergate's shadow clone scratched his hair slightly and seemed to be a little distressed and muttered to himself, "My main body really left me with a big problem. Not to mention how to explain to those old stubborn elders of Kiba. How am I going to explain to Shinakushina? Suddenly leaving the ninja village without saying a word, I will definitely be beaten by Shinakushina, right? I am just a shadow clone. If I am beaten like that, how can I complete my task?" Chapter 467. How Watergate's shadow clone convinced Woodleaf elders and Shinakushina was subconsciously ignored by Watergate, because Watergate and Jiraiya had already arrived at the territory of Mount Myaboku. For the arrival of Watergate and Jiraiya, the toads of Mount Myaboku didn't have any special reaction, but after the grown-up Toad Kishi and Toad Dragon pestered Watergate and asked why Naruto didn't come, Watergate and Jiraiya directly met Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin. I didn't expect Jiraiya's stupid mouth to be able to persuade Watergate boy to put down his job as Hokage and come to Mount Myaboku to practice Sage Mode. Has there been such a big change after marriage? Looking at Watergate, Fukasaku Sannin said with a little surprise. Shima Sannin and Azurin, who stood next to Fukasaku Sannin, didn't speak, but the look in her eyes was obviously some emotion. Jiraiya was able to persuade Watergate. Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin naturally knew about the marriage of Jiraiya and Tsunade. Even when Jiraiya got married, Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin also brought some local specialties from Mount Myaboku, various types of insects, to congratulate them. Jiraiya, who stood on Watergate's side and didn't speak, also became a little gray after experiencing the double blow of Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin. Ignoring Jiraiya's reaction, Fukasaku Sannin looked at Watergate and said, "Presumably, Jiraiya has probably told Watergate boy what Sage Mode is before, right?" Hearing Fukasaku Sannin's question, Watergate, who was about to appease his sensei, also quickly said to Fukasaku Sannin, "Yes, I already know that Sage Mode absorbs the free natural energy in the air and mixes it with your own physical energy and spiritual power to create a special chakra called Senjutsu Chakra. Through this special chakra, a person's physical fitness and ninjutsu ability can be greatly enhanced." There was nothing wrong with Watergate's words, so Fukasaku Sannin also touched the beard on his chin and said to Watergate with a little relief, "Indeed, everything about Sage Mode is based on Senjutsu Chakra, but there are also many hidden dangers in Sage Mode. After all, the natural energy in the air is not a gentle thing. On the contrary, if you're carelessness, the natural energy may riot. For so many years, the only person I've seen who can tame the violent natural energy is the kid who cultivated the internal force that Jiraiya brought to Mount Myaboku." Ha ha ha. Listening to Fukasaku Sannin's words, Watergate's face also changed slightly. The Sannin. It seems that Fukasaku Sannin is talking about Nangongja, who has been wandering outside his control in Woodleaf Village. And listening to Fukasaku Sennin's tone, it seems that Nangongja learned to control and even tame natural energy a long time ago. Watergate glanced at his sensei with a little reproach. He seemed to be complaining that his sensei didn't tell him such important information. Jiraiya, on the other hand, recovered from the grayish state and looked at Minato innocently. He seemed to want to tell Minato that he was the one who didn't ask him but blamed him for not telling him. Before he had time to communicate with Jiraiya, Fukasaku Sannin continued to talk, so Watergate could only focus his mind on Fukasaku Sennin's words. Violent natural energy will greatly affect the human body. At the beginning of the violent natural energy, the human body will greatly transform into a toad. When the body completely transforms into a toad, the human will transform into a stone toad. You should have seen a lot of giant stone toads on your way here, right? Those are not decorations of our Mount Mayaboku, but the appearance of people who failed to cultivate sage mode in the long history. Jiraiya's sage mode is like an unfinished product. It can be said that it has surpassed most of the contractors of Mount Mayaboku who succeeded in cultivating sage mode. Watergate, are you ready to put your life on the balance and get sage mode? Fukasaku Sennin's words were very serious, obviously. He was not joking with Watergate. But such a danger did not make Watergate feel the slightest fear. As a ninja, Watergate has long been ready to put his life on the line. And for Watergate, cultivating sage mode is not only a means to improve his strength, but also a necessary means to better protect the Woodleaf, protect his family, and protect everything he cherishes. I'm ready. Even if there is a big chance that I will fail, I still have to learn sage mode. I need immortal mode. My family needs immortal mode. My village needs immortal mode. As the Hokage of the Woodleaf, isn't it too incompetent to retreat from such a risk? Watergate said this sentence, and he couldn't help but think of the first Hokage, second Hokage, and 3 generations Hokage who sacrificed their lives for the Woodleaf. After these 3 Hokages, Watergate also thought of the people who fought with Watergate or sacrificed their lives for the Woodleaf. These people all looked at him with a kind of expectation, encouraging him and encouraging him. How can he retreat like this? His firm eyes were also seen by Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin. Watergate's eyes were not filled with ambition or a blind pursuit of power, but with the persistence of responsibility and the cherishing of cherished things. Only people with such beliefs are the most likely to succeed in cultivating sage mode. In this case, Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin had no more questions, because Watergate's eyes were already the best answer. Taking Watergate to the edge of the pool where the toad oil was flowing, Fukasaku Sannin put the toad oil on Watergate's forehead, and the sage mode cultivation officially began. When Jiraiya saw that Watergate had entered the sage mode cultivation under the care of Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin, he also nodded to Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin as a greeting, and directly left Mount Mayaboku and returned to the Woodleaf village. Watergate entrusted the task of guarding the Woodleaf to Jiraiya. As the 4th Hokage's master, Jiraiya can't discredit his disciple. Chapter 468. After leaving Mount Mayaboku, Jiraiya has been looking forward to it. The great Toad Sage once prophesied that one of his disciples will become the son of war, and the other will become the son of hope that will lead the ninja world to peace. Now it seems that the candidates of these 2 people may be completely determined. The son of war is the one who had been with him for 3 years in the Rain Country, Nagato, and the son of hope may be this Woodleaf 4th Hokage, Namake's Watergate. In Amigakure, Nagato, who was regarded by Jiraiya as the son of war, was also looking at Pain's 6 Paths clone standing in front of him with a serious face. After the last battle with his sensei Jiraiya, 5 of his 6 Paths clone were directly damaged, and almost all of them were damaged to varying degrees except for Jigakudo. After emergency repair during this period of time, except for Chikishoto, which was attacked by Jiraiya's Senjutsu Katan, which was completely destroyed, the other 6 Paths clone were repaired. But at this moment, Nagato didn't have the mind to check the state of his Six Paths clone after the repair. Instead, he frowned as if thinking about something. During the time when he was concentrating on repairing his Six Paths clone, Conan also brought him some of the latest developments in the ninja world from time to time, as well as the movements of the masked man, Hoodlum, who claimed to be Uchiha Madara. When he heard that Itachi Uchiha died, Uchiha Sasuke joined the Akatsuki as a mercenary, and was sent to capture the Hachibi column force of Kumo Shinobu village. Nagato's heart was filled with anger. This guy was really too excessive. Akatsuki organization was his own organization and not Hoodlum's organization. Casually sending his own members to their deaths and unscrupulously giving orders to the members of his organization, in the end who gave Hoodlum this kind of authority. As the leader of an organization, the most unacceptable thing is to have someone challenge his position, even if this person is the one who led him step by step out of the Akatsuki's weak predicament. I heard that you were looking for me? In Nagato's room, a space vortex suddenly formed, and Hoodlum's figure slowly walked out of it. Of course, Hoodlum wasn't the only one who walked out. There was also a strange person whose face was wrapped in a huge pitcher plant. His face was half black and half white. Seeing Zetsu and Hoodlum appear together, Nagato wasn't surprised. After all, Hoodlum was the one who brought Zetsu to the organization. Although Zetsu's ability was very good, and very useful for the organization, Nagato never regarded him as his confidant. Weren't Hoodlum and Hoodlum the same kind of people? That's right. I was indeed looking for you, mainly because I wanted to ask you a question. Nagato's tone was cold, but Hoodlum and Zetsu didn't seem to notice it. Hoodlum grinned and said to Nagato, "Oh. Our Akatsuki's god, unexpectedly has a question to consult me. This really makes me flattered. Please tell me. I will answer you one by one." Obviously, these words were very gentlemanly, but when they came out of Hoodlum's mouth, they sounded full of sarcasm. Obviously, he called Nagato as God, but in his words, he regarded himself as the one who dominated the so-called God. Hearing Hoodlum's words, Nagato's originally cold face slowly faded, and a soft laughter came out of his mouth. He suddenly raised his head, and stared at Hoodlum's mask with his Rinnegan full of circles, and said, "What I want to ask is actually a very simple question. Is this Akatsuki organization mine? Or is it Hoodlum's organization?" When Nagato shouted such a sentence, the Six Paths doppelgangers standing beside Nagato immediately moved, firmly surrounding Hoodlum and Zetsu. Pairs of ruthless and indifferent eyes swept past every vital point of Hoodlum and Hoodlum's body. It seemed that as long as Nagato willed it, the Six Paths doppelgangers would rush up and fight Hoodlum and Zetsu without fear of death. Hoodlum and Zetsu didn't care about the Six Path clones. What really made Hoodlum and Zetsu feel the danger was the skinny Nagato in front of them. As an outer path, Nagato was actually more dangerous than the Six Path clones. Obviously, Hoodlum was ready to fight, but he didn't look nervous at all. On the contrary, he was still so playful and still so calm. "Nagato, what you said is wrong. During this time, you have been repairing your Six Path clones. Although you can still get some necessary information, the situation of the Akatsuki isn't that simple. However, the situation in the shinobi world isn't something that can be explained with just a few pieces of information. Naturally, I can't disturb your progress in repairing the Six Paths clone, so I can only follow the strategy we made before. Now that you have recovered your strength, it's naturally not my turn to give orders. My leader, I don't know what your next plan is." Nagato's eyes were still coldly looking at Hoodlum standing in front of him. Looking at Hoodlum pretending to be a clown, Nagato's eyes flashed with killing intent. But soon, his killing intent was forcibly suppressed by Nagato, because after Akatsuki's members died one after another, Akatsuki's high-end combat power was actually a bit lacking. If Zetsu and Hoodlum were left here, Akatsuki would only have himself, Conan, and Kisame. Even if Sasuke and Snake Squad were counted as mercenaries, it would be far from enough to complete his plan. Hoodlum was actually using the general trend and his obsession to complete the plan to create a kind of coercion, a coercion that he had to tolerate. Slowly waving his hand to let Six Path clones retreat, Nagato glanced at Hoodlum with his Rinnegan, and said with a slightly cold tone, "Since you have sent Uchiha and Sasuke to capture Hachibi, then I will go to the Wood Leaf to meet Nine Tails' column force. If everything goes well, I think our plan will be completed soon." Hearing that Nagato was going to the Wood Leaf, Hoodlum also slowly took a step forward and said to Nagato, "The Wood Leaf is different from other places. It's not so easy to invade. Now, there are 4 Kage-level powerhouses in the Wood Leaf: Watergate, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Nangongja. We must not underestimate them. Let me and Conan accompany you to capture Nine Tails' column force." Chapter 469. Yo, you guys, you suddenly appeared. Hurry up and retreat, I'll let you go. Oh yeah. Looking at Sasuke and the other 3 members of the Snake team who suddenly appeared in front of him, Killer Bee looked at Sasuke's group of 4 vigilantly. Although he said that as long as Sasuke's group retreated, he would let them go. But as a ninja, Killer Bee was still instinctively ready to fight. Before coming here to intercept Killer Bee, Sasuke's group also did some homework on Killer Bee's temperament. Although they knew that Killer Bee usually spoke with a sense of rap, when they really faced Killer Bee, they could really understand how noisy and unpleasant Killer Bee's rap was. "Retreat? Of course, we will retreat, but we will take you with us." Suigetsu looked at Killer Bee, his eyes full of determination, but there was still some worry in Suigetsu's eyes. Although Suigetsu thinks that the strength of his group is very strong, his enemy is also not a weak guy. This is Hachibi Column Force, ranked 2nd among the 9-tailed beasts. And according to the information collected during this time, it is not difficult to know that Killer Bee is a ninja who can perfectly control his power as Hachibi Column Force. Such a person is not so easy to deal with, is he? After hearing Shueisha's words, Killer Bee's expression turned solemn. Although Killer Bee didn't know these ninjas who suddenly appeared on the road to intercept him, the uniforms on their bodies were enough to make Killer Bee serious. You know, another Hachibi Column Force of Kumo Shinobu Village, Nibi Column Force Yujito Nibi, was forcibly abducted by Akatsuki not long ago, and her life and death are still unknown. Judging from all the information collected, Akatsuki is working hard to collect bijou, so Yujito Nibi is naturally in danger. Although the tailed beast inside Yukito's body is only Nibi, but its strength is also quite good. Such a ninja was captured by Akatsuki's people without any resistance. It is enough to see how difficult Akatsuki's people are. Moreover, he is Hachibi Column Force. As long as Akatsuki is not confused, they will definitely send more powerful forces to surround him. Yo, you bastards, you idiots. I just came out for a walk, but I accidentally had to fight. Although I don't like it very much, I will do my best. Open your eyes carefully and look at my light. Oh yeah. Since the other party was ready to fight, Killer Bee did not hesitate at all. He immediately made up his mind to open up a path of blood. From the moment he was surrounded, Killer Bee has been carefully observing the 4 ninjas opposite him. And Hachibi in Killer Bee's body is also constantly perceiving the foundation of the enemy opposite him through his ability. Although he doesn't know what ability these enemies have, Chakra, which is obviously different from ordinary people, has already told Killer Bee and Hachibi that the 4 people opposite him all have Kekkei Genkai. In the ninja world, although there are strong and weak Kekkei Genkai, ninjas who can cultivate to Jonin or even more powerful level must be people who have mastered the power in their body. Even if their Kekkei Genkai is very weak, under the continuous accumulation of combat awareness and combat experience, no matter how weak and useless their Kekkei Genkai is, they can't ignore it. Otherwise, they will definitely suffer a big loss. This is one of the experiences that Killer Bee has obtained after almost completely experiencing the Third Ninja World War and completing countless difficult tasks. The moment they saw Killer Bee pull out his sword, Yugo and Kuroto also acted. Yugo's body was instantly covered with black runes, and the natural energy that filled the natural world constantly poured into Yugo's body. The violent killing intent instantly filled Yugo's spiritual world. His originally dull face has become ferocious at this moment, and a cold and uncomfortable aura slowly rose from Yugo's body. With a slight struggle in his eyes, Yugo looked back at Sasuke standing beside him, and Sasuke also looked at Yugo quietly. Even though he didn't say anything, Zhongwu's discomfort from the intense killing intent that was assaulting his nerves slowly disappeared. Yugo's left arm began to change constantly, and huge barbs appeared on Yugo's arm. A primitive aura, as if from ancient times, gushed out from Yugo's body. If you must find a word to describe Yugo at this moment, perhaps only power is the most appropriate word. It's the most simple feeling of power. Crystal release. Crystal shuriken. After seeing that Yugo had controlled his killing intent, Kuroda also quickly formed hand seals with a tacit understanding. Pink crystals were constantly produced. Under Kuroda's control, the shuriken-like crystals rushed towards Killer Bee at an extremely fast speed. Sure enough, he's the holder of Kekkei Genkai. After seeing the changes in Yugo's body and Kuroda's special ability, Killer Bee also confirmed his judgment. One is a Kekkei Genkai that acts on the body, and the other is a Kekkei Genkai that acts on the release technique. Be careful. That kid whose body has changed is not simple. I smell a trace of Sennin's aura on him. Hachibi, who was sealed in Killer Bee's body, reminded Killer Bee in a timely manner. Hachibi, who once lived with Hagoromo Sennin, knew how powerful Sennin chakra is better than anyone else. Yo, don't worry at all, I'm ready. Sit quietly by the side and watch me shine. Oh yeah. Even though he was talking to the Hachibi in his body, Killer Bee still spoke in a strange tone. And Hachibi seems to be used to Column Force's personality. Although there was a bit of helplessness on his face, he didn't do anything special. Waving the ninja sword in his hand, Killer Bee easily split and blocked the shuriken that was shot towards him one by one. Immediately after Kuroda's shuriken, Yugo was very close to Killer Bee's side. Yugo's timing was very good. Killer Bee, who was holding two swords, had just blocked the last two shuriken, and there was a little gap in his body. The punch that Zhongwu had been accumulating power for a long time was thrown out, and judging from the wind and the sound of friction between the fist and the air, this punch was definitely not easy to receive. Chapter 470. But Killer Bee isn't a person who only uses two swords. When he found that he couldn't use his hands to defend himself, Killer Bee immediately used his chakra to activate a seal on his ankle. The moment the seal was activated, a long sword suddenly appeared next to his ankle. He used the tip of his foot to gently lift the hilt of the long saber. With sharp eyes and agile hands, he clamped the long saber between his leg socket. He injected the Raitun chakra from his body into the long blade that was clamped between his legs. The long blade constantly moved around the lightning chakra, and at the same time, the long blade also began to vibrate at a high frequency. Lightning ninjutsu. Supersonic thunder vibration release. The leg that wasn't holding the saber suddenly exerted force. Killer Bee's entire body assumed a strange posture as he rushed towards Yugo, who was clearly attacking him. Originally, Red Lotus saw Killer Bee summon the long sword and also seemed to use a powerful ninjutsu. Red Lotus, who was preparing to use crystal release to harass Killer Bee, quickly stopped making hand seals. After all, she was now mainly a long-range attacker, and most of the ninjutsu she used were AoE ninjutsu. With the current distance between Killer Bee and Yugo, Red Lotus knew that Yugo would be affected, so she didn't dare to make a move. Although Red Lotus usually doesn't respect her teammates when she talks to them, it's just her personality. In fact, Red Lotus still cherishes her teammates very much. It's because of this that Killer Bee was given a chance. Under the influence of inertia, Yugo had no way of changing the direction of his punch. He could only use his deformed left fist to smash directly into the lightning saber. Supersonic thunder vibration release uses the power of lightning release to act on the long sword. So the long sword has the ability to paralyze lightning and also has a strong cutting ability. However, because Killer Bee used the blade of his long sword to block Yugo's punch, it played a certain defensive role. The lightning on the long sword invaded Yugo's body the moment it touched him. Because the amount of lightning was too large, it directly began to destroy the muscle tissue and tendons of Yugo's left arm. So Yugo couldn't increase the power of his fist by releasing more chakra. The huge power that originally carried by the fist was constantly reduced under the high-frequency vibration of the long sword, and the power that really affected the long sword and Killer Bee's body has been greatly reduced. Perceiving that Yugo's body has gradually adapted to the paralysis caused by the lightning, Killer Bee directly raised his leg and threw the long sword in the air. Then he bit the handle of the sword with his mouth and used his leg to kick Yugo's body fiercely, directly pulling away from Yugo. Releasing lightning release chakra from his leg socket actually has a certain degree of pressure on Killer Bee's mind and body. Just like now, after Killer Bee stood still, his left leg, which was originally holding the long sword, trembled slightly. Just when Killer Bee was about to adjust his state and launch another attack, a thick fog was quietly produced. Water release, mist concealment technique. The place where Sasuke's team intercepted Killer Bee was relatively near a relatively high mountain, so there was a little fog due to the high altitude. Under the combined effect of the natural fog and the fog produced after the use of mist concealment technique, the mist concealment technique used by Suigetsu became more difficult to see through. After Killer Bee noticed that he was shrouded in the mist concealment technique, he also took out all his 7 long swords very cautiously. There were 2 long swords under his armpit and arm socket respectively, a long sword in his mouth, a long sword in his abdomen, and a long sword in his leg socket. Obviously, Killer Bee also became more cautious after experiencing the attack of Red Lotus and Yugo. Although he was wearing sunglasses, his constantly turning head clearly showed Killer Bee's serious attitude. Suigetsu's brother, Hozuki Mangetsu, was not only the user of the double sword of the Mist's 7 swords, but also the user of the other 6 swords. Although Hozuki Mangetsu was dead, he left some of his methods of using the remaining 6 swords, so he also mentioned the method of using the broken sword, Zanpakuto. Suigetsu's figure has quietly appeared behind Killer Bee. The Zanpakuto was raised high, and was about to slash down on Killer Bee, but Killer Bee still didn't notice. Suigetsu's face slowly showed a smile, but Sasuke, who stood aside and didn't participate in the battle, began to slowly mobilize chakra in his body. Sasuke had seen Zabuza, the original Zanpakuto wielder, use silent assassination jutsu, so it was very easy to discover the shortcomings of Suigetsu's slightly shoddy assassination jutsu. For Killer Bee, Hachibi column force, Sasuke was still full of vigilance, so Sasuke mobilized his chakra at this moment to save Suigetsu if something went wrong. Sure enough, just when the Zanpakuto was about to attack Killer Bee's face with his back to Suigetsu showed a smile of success. Killer Bee's perception ability was indeed not very strong, but there was a Hachibi in Killer Bee's body that could be said to be born from chakra. Although he used silent assassination jutsu, Suigetsu didn't perfectly hide his chakra aura. At the moment when Suigetsu approached Killer Bee, Hachibi had already informed his man column force. Although it seems that Killer Bee is a careless person, we can't completely ignore Killer Bee's combat experience. He is now in a 1 versus 4 situation. As long as the other party is ready to start fighting with him, then the probability of Killer Bee's defeat is still very high. Therefore, for Killer Bee, there are only 2 choices. Either he tries his best to break through the encirclement of Sasuke's team and escape smoothly, or he concentrates his strength and starts to defeat the members of Sasuke's team one by one. Obviously, Killer Bee, who has his own pride, didn't choose the first option, escape, but began to look for opportunities to defeat the members of Sasuke's team one by one. And Suigetsu, who was already standing behind him and was discovered by him, isn't he the best target? Chapter 471. The powerful and violent Bijou chakra instantly covered Killer Bee's body, and under the joint control of Killer Bee and Hachibi, Killer Bee's body did not transform into Naruto's Yambi mode. Killer Bee's body was now only partially Bijou, and the Bijou transformation was very complete. A huge octopus tentacle rushed out from behind Killer Bee. Suigetsu, who couldn't react in time, was directly wrapped in the huge octopus tentacle, struggling hard but to no avail. Killer Bee could naturally perceive that his octopus tentacle had captured the target, so lightning surged all over his body, stimulating his physical ability through lightning. Raitun Ninjutsu. Baron Egret Blade. The original Baron Egret Blade was a pure blade technique without using Bijou Chakra and Raitan Chakra to stimulate the body to enhance the power, but in order to speed up the battle process, Killer Bee used Bijou mode and Raitan Chakra on his blade technique at the same time. The 7 blades that Killer Bee used at that time were now ready to attack. After a slight accumulation of power, the 7 blades on Killer Bee's body moved at the same time. Without removing the huge octopus tentacle wrapped around Suigetsu, the blade light directly slashed on the octopus tentacle. But there was no stagnation after being hindered at all. The huge octopus tentacle condensed by Hachibi's Bijou Chakra was so fragile under Killer Bee's blade light. After a dozen or 20 slashes, Shueiyu, who had been trapped in the octopus tentacles and seemed to be unable to move, suddenly turned into a pool of water and escaped through the gaps of the octopus tentacles. What Suigetsu used was the Kekiai Genkai of Hozuki clan. Seeing that Suigetsu had escaped from the bondage, Sasuke not only did not stop the chakra in his body, but also quickly printed. A ninjutsu was quickly completed in Sasuke's hand, and he held his hand in front of his mouth. Katan, Dragon Fire Jutsu. A B-class ninjutsu was released by Sasuke, but it was not launched toward Killer Bee, but flew toward the sky. Suigetsu, Red Lotus, and Yugo immediately moved after discovering that Sasuke used fire release ninjutsu towards the sky. Suigetsu quickly lifted the mist concealment jutsu he just cast, and Yugo quickly distanced himself from Killer Bee. Looking at Killer Bee, Red Lotus quickly formed hand seals, and a ninjutsu was completed in an instant. Crystal Release. 8 crystal walls formation. Huge pink crystal pillars stretched out from the ground. A total of 8 crystal pillars trapped Killer Bee in the middle. Killer Bee, who had just used his octopus tentacles to trap others, was now trapped by someone else. When he found that he was trapped, and Sasuke's 3 companions also distanced themselves from him one by one, Killer Bee's heart inevitably felt a sense of crisis. The strong sense of crisis made Killer Bee immediately begin to communicate with Hachibi in his body. A large number of Bijou Chakra was released by Hachibi, and Killer Bee's body gradually began to deform. One tail after another emerged from Killer Bee's back. 1 tail, 2 tails, 3 tails, 6 tails. With the continuous release of the Bijou's chakra, Killer Bee's body slowly swelled up. Cracks also began to slowly appear on the crystal walls of 8 crystal walls formation. The hastily used 8 crystal walls formation was slowly overwhelmed under the impact of Column Force, who had released Rokubi mode. Red Lotus was naturally the person who knew the state of the crystal walls. With a little anxiety and tension, Red Lotus looked at Sasuke. Sasuke didn't have any intention to respond to Red Lotus's gaze at this moment. His eyes, which had become 3 Tomo state, stared at the huge black cloud formed in the sky with constant electric current surging in it. His hand quickly printed, and the highly compressed lightning chakra was formed in Sasuke's hand. He stabbed the lightning in his hand into the black thundercloud in the sky in the form of Chidori Einherjar. Because of the stimulation of the external lightning, the lightning in the black thundercloud became more violent. Feeling the changes in the thundercloud, Sasuke's eyes finally turned to Killer Bee's Bijou state, who was about to struggle out of the crystal wall. Divine Beast Patrol, Kamui Descend. Raitan Kirin. That's right, after seeing Nangong's summoned Beast Ryo's appearance in the sky, Sasuke developed a ninjutsu that used huge lightning power to attack the enemy. After this period of practice and research, Sasuke finally displayed the most powerful ninjutsu he could master now. Under the guidance of Chidori Einherjar, the lightning in the black thundercloud was drawn out. A slightly abstract Kirin stood in the air, just like what Sasuke said just now. Divine Beast Patrol, Kamui Descend. The Chilant's eyes swept across everyone on the ground mercilessly, as if a real mythical beast had descended upon them. Finally, Kirin put his eyes on Killer Bee, who was constantly releasing Bijou Chakra to break free from the crystal wall. A trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. It was strange that chakra and lightning condensed, but its eyes had emotions. Tear it apart. Kirin. Sasuke waved his hand fiercely, and as if he had received an order, Kirin jumped high. It rushed in the direction of Killer Bee like a predator. Although it was huge, it was extremely fast. Kirin almost hit Killer Bee's body in an instant. Whether it was the crystal wall that trapped Killer Bee or Killer Bee itself, they were directly submerged in the sea of lightning. Thunder and lightning continued to wreak havoc on the ground, and the ground was scorched black under the effect of the thunder and lightning. The thunderstorm-like scene lasted for nearly 10 minutes. No matter what kind of life it was, it would be difficult to survive such an attack, right? Feeling that the time was almost up, Sasuke also slowly dispersed the Chidori sharp spear in his hand. Although casting Kirin mainly relied on the natural lightning in nature, Sasuke still needed to consume a lot of energy to control Kirin's attack range. After 10 minutes, Sasuke's chakra was almost exhausted. When Sasuke withdrew the lightning, a feeling of weakness swept through Sasuke's body. Chapter 472. Seeing that Sasuke was obviously exhausted, Red Lotus and Yugo hurriedly wanted to run to Sasuke's side to support him. But Sasuke stopped his teammates' actions with a look. After all, it was still impossible to judge whether the enemy really lost his ability to move. So everything must be done with the mission. Red Lotus and Yugo naturally had a tacit understanding with Sasuke. They knew that Sasuke didn't want to be supported, so they had to slowly advance in the direction of Killer Bee with Suigetsu in a triangular state. All three of them maintained a vigilant state. After all, column force was different from ordinary ninja. After such an attack, ordinary ninja must have lost the ability to resist, but column force had resistance and recovery ability far beyond ordinary people. Now is not the time to take it lightly. Slowly approaching the position where Killer Bee was standing, Suigetsu, Yugo, and Red Lotus movements also became slower and slower. Without Sasuke's support, Killer Bee could only rely on the three of them if he still had the power to resist. In such a case, no matter how cautious they were, it was not too much. They exchanged glances with each other, and the three of them were finally less than half a meter away from Killer Bee's direction. Killer Bee's current state looked extremely miserable. There were many traces of being burned by lightning on his dark skin. Because of the bijou transformation, Killer Bee's skin also showed an extremely strange dark red color. Water release, water iron cannon, second ding. Suigetsu pinched his hand into a gun shape, and a small group of water iron cannon was condensing on his two index fingers. Feeling that the water pressure had reached a certain limit, Suigetsu controlled the small water iron cannon at his fingertips to shoot at Killer Bee's body. Just after the water iron cannon at his fingertips was shot out, two more water iron cannon condensed between Suigetsu's fingers. Almost continuously, Shueiwa had already shot out 6 water iron cannons. 2 hit Killer Bee's shoulder, 2 hit Killer Bee's crotch, and 2 hit Killer Bee's knee. The water iron cannon became extremely penetrating due to Suigetsu's accumulation, and it almost instantly penetrated Killer Bee's body on the ground. Looking at his two teammates, Water Moon nodded, indicating that his teammate Killer Bee has lost the ability to resist. So Red Lotus's hand began to form hand seals, and a half-sealing technique and half-ninjutsu was quickly completed. In order to increase the power and hardness of the ninjutsu she cast, Kuroto used almost 3 times the amount of chakra she would normally use to cast such ninjutsu. Crystal Escape, Red Fruit, Change. It was originally a ninjutsu used for self-defense, but under the deliberate control of Red Lotus, it became a ninjutsu with internal defense far stronger than external defense. Killer Bee's body was firmly sealed in the pink crystal. Yugo took out a sealing scroll that he had prepared beforehand. Killer Bee's body, which had become even larger after being wrapped in the red fruit, was sealed within the scroll. After finishing all the operations, Red Lotus, Yugo, and Suigetsu finally came to Sasuke, who was almost sitting on the ground. Although they didn't say anything, the concern in their eyes was so obvious. Mission completed. It's time for us to go back. Using the long sword in his hand as a support point, Sasuke stood up with a little difficulty. Looking at the scroll in Yugo's hand, Sasuke nodded and issued his order. Turning around, Sasuke was just about to leave, but Suigetsu stopped in front of Sasuke, looking like he had something to say but didn't know how to say it. For his teammates, Sasuke has already regarded them as people he needs to cherish, so when he saw Suigetsu's hesitant look, Sasuke was not unhappy, but he said to Suigetsu with a little doubt, "What are you talking about? What's wrong? Suigetsu, do you have something to say?" Hearing Sasuke's question, Suigetsu could only take a deep breath, as if to stabilize his emotions, and said to Sasuke, "Is what we are doing right now really right?" Very unusually, Suigetsu didn't show his usual rascal look this time, but looked at Sasuke with some seriousness. Obviously, this question has been in Suigetsu's heart for a long time. Before meeting with Hoodlum, Sasuke said to his 3 teammates that joining Akatsuki this time was actually to explore Akatsuki's intelligence as much as possible, and then find a way to destroy Akatsuki's plan. Originally, they thought that although they seemed to be dealing with Hachibi column force this time, as long as they didn't put in any effort, it would be better to make the appearance of defeat more realistic. On the one hand, this can save their own lives, and on the other hand, it can also be regarded as an indirect hindrance to Akatsuki's plan. But in the heat of the battle, Sasuke directly used his strongest ninjutsu. In this case, Red Lotus, Yugo, and Suigetsu couldn't go easy on them. After a battle, they actually caught Hachibi column force. Although they don't know how many bijou has been collected by Akatsuki, now that they have set their sights on the powerful Hachibi, doesn't it prove that Akatsuki has actually collected a lot of bijou? Their current behavior doesn't seem to be hindering Akatsuki's plan at all. Instead, it feels like they are helping the evildoers. Hearing Suigetsu's words, Sasuke naturally couldn't pretend that he didn't hear it. So after clearing his throat a little and adjusting his thoughts, Sasuke asked Suigetsu, "What do you think?" "Suigetsu, let's not talk about whether what we are doing now is helping the evildoers. I want to ask you a question first. What kind of people do you think Akatsuki's people are?" Although Suigetsu had some doubts, since it was a question asked by Sasuke, Suigetsu naturally couldn't ignore it directly. So Suigetsu could only search for all the information he knew about Akatsuki, carefully thinking about Sasuke's question, and then said to Sasuke, "They are a group of lunatics. A group of lunatics with powerful strength and paranoid thinking." Trying hard to compare the information he knew with the vocabulary in his mind, Suigetsu found that it seems that only lunatics are suitable for Akatsuki's members. Isn't it a group of lunatics who attempt to subvert the ninja world and make the ninja world break out the largest battle? Indeed, they are a group of lunatics. Hearing Suigetsu's words, Sasuke slowly nodded, but then turned to Suigetsu and said, "But they are not only a group of lunatics. Such a group of lunatics is not only powerful, but also ruthless. So they also have intelligence beyond ordinary people. If we don't work hard, if we perfunctorily perform the task they give us, do you think they won't find out with their intelligence? These people's goal is the 9-tailed beasts. Even if we really help them collect the 8-tailed beasts, so what? As long as the last-tailed beast is missing, their plan will not be successful. And 9 tails, I believe they will have no way to get it." For some reason, when talking about 9 tails, Sasuke's eyes suddenly flashed with a ray of confidence. Sasuke believes in Wood Leaf, believes in Nangongja, and believes in the blonde boy who has the most dazzling smile since childhood. Chapter 473. Ah! What the hell is this? Jiraiya looked at the 3-centimeter thick stack of documents in his hand. The veins on his face were bulging. It looked like he wanted to tear the documents in his hand into pieces. However, Jiraiya didn't dare to tear this document to shreds as he thought, because this document involved many conflicts between clans in Konoha, big and small. These things need to be coordinated by Hokage. Now that Watergate is practicing Sage Mode in Mount Myaboku, and the qualifications of the Shadow Clone Jutsu and Nara Shikaku are not enough to convince these conservative clans. This kind of thing can only fall on Jiraiya and Tsunade. Such a thing involving all kinds of interests is like a mess in front of Jiraiya, and his wife Tsunade is dealing with another thing with Shizune, so when Jiraiya just got the document, he didn't ask Tsunade to help him look at it. Finally, he couldn't hold back the anxiety in his heart and shouted at the ceiling. Shizun raised her head and looked at Jiraiya, who was roaring towards the sky. She took out a small notebook from her arms and gently drew an ink mark on it. Looking at the small notebook in Shizun's hand, it's not difficult to see that there are several pages of densely drawn letters on it. Obviously, as long as Jiraiya has such an uncontrollable emotion, it will be recorded by Shizun. Maybe this is something Shizun does to comfort him when he's bored. Hearing Jiraiya's wail, Tsunade can only put down the document in her hand and slowly walked to Jiraiya's side. She skillfully took the document in Jiraiya's hand, used a pen in her hand to slightly organize the information inside from time to time, and then returned the document in her hand to Jiraiya. Tsunade has watched her two grandfathers deal with public affairs since she was a child, and when she grew up, she would occasionally help her teacher, 3 generations Hokage, deal with some less important public affairs. Tsunade was actually very clear about the process. Although dealing with the affairs of Woodleaf Village like this was a little more difficult for Tsunade, it was still within her ability. I really admire Watergate. He can deal with such bullshit things one by one patiently. Shaking the document in his hand, Jiraiya said to Tsunade with a little admiration. After hearing Jiraiya's sigh, Tsunade also nodded. Indeed, being the Hokage is not only an honor, but also an important duty. Woodleaf Village needs the Hokage's help to solve all the big and small matters, so in fact, after becoming the Hokage, it is no different from contributing everything to the Woodleaf Village. If you don't really sit in the position of Hokage, you can't understand how heavy the responsibility of such a title is. Speaking of this, Tsunade couldn't help but think of her grandfather who died young, her second grandfather who died in the war, and her teacher. These people are worthy of the respect of every Woodleaf ninja and civilians. In order to maintain the current stability of Woodleaf, there are countless people, whether in the light or in the dark, sacrificing their blood and their lives. Just as Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizun sighed together about the duties and obligations of Hokage, a figure quietly appeared in the sky of Woodleaf. Wearing the uniform of the Akatsuki with a black background and red clouds, Pain, with orange hair, was overlooking the panoramic view of Woodleaf like a god at the moment. With Rinnegan, Pain's vision was naturally very strong. Although he was high in the sky, the scene inside Woodleaf could still be seen very clearly. The pedestrians and ninjas coming and going in the streets of Woodleaf naturally had no way to find a powerful ninja with sage eyes suddenly appeared above their heads. They were still busy with their own things. But these people all had something in common. Their faces were filled with happy smiles. They were happy that they lived in Woodleaf, and they were happy that they could fight for their dreams. Woodleaf! Pain looked at Woodleaf. Although his eyes were cold, there was a hint of hope and envy. In the war-filled ninja world, only Woodleaf can maintain such peace and calmness. Such a life is worthy of envy, but the people who have such a life also have to bear the same sin. It is a sin to enjoy such a life alone. I, Pain, as a god walking in the world, judge you guilty. Pain slowly opened his hands, and chakra continued to condense in Pain's hands. A little black halo slowly formed in Pain's palms. If Jiraiya was here, he would definitely find that Pain was using his unique ability called Shinra Tensei at this moment. But at this moment, the chakra condensed in Pain's body was far more powerful than the Shinra Tensei that Jiraiya had experienced before. Now, the large number of chakra condensed in Pain's hands has proved that this Shinra Tensei will have far more power than before. Konoha has a defensive enchantment around it. As a village's guard enchantment, Konoha's enchantment naturally has various functions, and the detection of chakra is naturally one of the functions that can't be ignored. When Pain was suspended in the sky, because the amount of chakra used was very small, it was difficult to detect. But when Pain began to gather power for his Shinra Tensei, Woodleaf's barrier squad immediately discovered the abnormality in the sky above the Woodleaf. According to the barrier squad's rules, such a powerful source of chakra suddenly appeared near the Woodleaf must be directly transmitted to the Hokage's office unconditionally. So when Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizun had been dealing with official business, an Umbu directly under Watergate appeared directly in the Hokage's office. Reporting to several lords, a huge energy source appeared above the Woodleaf. The barrier squad requests to immediately send Summon Beast and Ninja to investigate. Hearing the words of the Umbu, Jiraiya also immediately focused on detecting the huge energy source in the mouth of the Umbu. The familiar aura of chakra directly made Jiraiya fall into a sluggish state, and Jiraiya could only murmur, "He is here." You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.